Değerli konuklar, kıymetli katılımcılar, sevgili öğrenciler, iş, ticaret ve pazarlama dünyasının birbirinden önemli temsilcileri. İstanbul Ticaret Odamızın organizasyonuyla düzenlenen World Marketing Summit İstanbul'a hoş geldiniz. Dünyanın en önemlilerinden olan bu zirvede pazarlamanın geleceği A'dan Z'ye ele alınacak. Alanında otorite ve duayen isimler ufuklarımızı açacaklar. Yeniden hoş geldiniz. Değerli katılımcılar, kıymetli konuklar, zirvenin ev sahibi, İstanbul Ticaret Odası Yönetim Kurulu Başkanı Sayın Şekip Avdagiç'i, pazarlamanın geleceğine İstanbul'dan bir bakış temalı açılış konuşmasını gerçekleştirmek üzere huzurlarınıza davet ediyorum efendim. Hoş geldiniz Sayın Başkanım.
Saygıdeğer misafirler, hanımefendiler, beyefendiler, sözlerime başlarken hepinizi şahsım ve İstanbul Ticaret Odası adına saygıyla selamlıyorum. İstanbul Ticaret Odası'nın ev sahipliğinde İstanbul'da düzenlenen Dünya Pazarlama Zirvesi'ne hoş geldiniz. Zirvenin bahanesi pazarlama duayeni Profesör Kotler dostuma büyük bir incelik göstererek aramızda olduğu için özellikle teşekkür ediyorum. Hakikaten bugün İstanbul iş dünyası için tarihi bir günü yaşadığımızı düşünüyorum. İstanbul Ticaret Odası olarak Dünya Pazarlama Zirvesi'ni şehrimizde düzenleyen kurum olmanın gururunu yaşıyoruz. Bu kadim şehirde en az bu şehrin tarihi kadar eski olan pazarlamanın sadece geleceğini konuşmuyor, aynı zamanda geleceğini de tasarlıyoruz. Dünya Pazarlama Zirvesi bugüne kadar birçok şehirde yapıldı. Tokyo'da, Toronto'da, Seul'de, Miami'de düzenlendi. Ama emin olun hiçbir şehre İstanbul kadar yaraşmadı. Çünkü İstanbul 8500 yıllık tarihi ve birikimiyle şehirlerin anası olduğu kadar uluslararası ticaretin, uluslararası pazarlamanın da merkezi. Bunun en önemli kanıtı bugün Dünya Pazarlama Zirvesi'ni topladığımız şu kongre merkezinde bulunduğumuz Haliç'tir. Haliç'in İstanbul Boğazı ile kesiştiği noktada Galata'ya, devamındaki Beyoğlu'ya, bir coğrafyadan başka bir coğrafyaya ürün pazarlayan tüccarlar yerleşeli 3200 yıl oldu değerli dostlar. Onlar Haliç'in dingin sularına kurdukları iskelelere Karadeniz ve Akdeniz'den gelen yük dolu gemilerini yanaştırıyorlardı. Hatta şunu söylemek isterim, dünyanın belki çoğumuz bunun farkında olmadık bugüne kadar ama dünyanın ilk serbest ticaret bölgesi Galata'da kuruldu. Çevresi surlarla çevrili Galata, tüccarların ve ticari malların aynı zamanda güvenliğini sağlayan bir bölgeydi. Buraya önce Venedikli tüccarlar geldi yerleşti. Ticarette ve pazarlamada büyük sıçrama sağlayan Cenevizliler de onları takip etti. Karadeniz ile Akdeniz ve Avrupa arasındaki ticarette İstanbul o dönemde ve bugün de çok önemli bir lojistik merkezi. O tarihten itibaren de İstanbul her tüccarın uğradığı, her malın getirildiği bir pazarlama merkezine dönüştü. Dün de merkezdi, bugün de merkez olmaya devam ediyor. Değerli katılımcılar, ben bir İstanbul aşığı olduğumu ifade etmek isterim. Onun için benim gözümde İstanbul kelimenin tam anlamıyla hülyaların şehridir. Bir marka şehridir. Dünyanın merkezidir. İstanbul'u bu kadar büyük yapan ise hiçbir katkıya ihtiyaç duymadan bizatihi varlığıyla bir değer olmasıdır. Başlı başına bir değer olan İstanbul, ticaretin de, pazarlamanın da geçmişten geleceğe uzanan görkemli bir merkezi. İzninizle onun binlerce yıldır ticaretin ve pazarlamanın merkezi olduğunu gösteren bir örneği de sizlerle paylaşmak istiyorum. Yaklaşık 10 yıl önce Yenikapı'da Boğaz'ın altından geçen tüp geçit inşaatında kazılar yapılıyordu. Hepiniz biliyorsunuz. Bu kazılarda birçok tarihi nesne bulundu. Mesela uzaklardan şehre buğday getiren 2000 yıllık tekneler başta olmak üzere yüzlerce buluntuya ulaşıldı. Ama içlerinden bir tanesi vardı, gerçekten muhteşemdi. Arkeologlar özenle ve zarar vermeden o nesneyi toprağın içinden çıkardılar. Gördükleri manzara karşısında şaşkına döndüler. Çünkü bu son derece büyük ustalıkla yapılmış 1500 yıllık bir sandaletti. Neredeyse ilk günkü gibi korunmuş durumdaydı. Üstelik üzerinde çeşitli desen ve figürler vardı. Daha da önemlisi tahtadan yapılmış bu ustalık harikası üründe bir yazı vardı. Anlaşılıyor ki bu sandaleti bir erkek eşi için yapmış. Ve üzerindeki kuş figürünün yanında şu cümleyi yazmıştı: "Sağlıkla kullan hanımefendi, güzellikle ve mutlulukla giy." Şimdi size soruyorum. Böylesine bir ürünü, böylesine içli, incelikli bir cümleyle eşine takdim eden bir ustanın yaşadığı İstanbul, pazarlamanın merkezi olmaz da ne olur? Değerli misafirler, en iyi ürüne sahip olsanız bile eğer onu insanlara anlatacak, onunla bir değer kazanacaklarına inandıracak pazarlama yaklaşımınız yoksa aslında siz o ürüne sahip değilsiniz. Sahip olduğunuz değerlerin diğer insanlar tarafından keşfedilmesini sağlamanın ise tek bir yolu vardır. O da değerlerinizi bir marka olarak zihinlere yerleştirecek pazarlama sanatıdır. İşte İstanbul bunu yüzlerce yıldır değil, binlerce yıldır başarıyla yapıyor. Peki İstanbul bunu nasıl başardı? Bana göre bunun iki önemli sebebi var. Bir, İstanbul, Batı'nın en doğusundaki, Doğu'nun en batısındaki bir gizemli şehir olarak Doğu'nun tılsımını, Batı'nın modern ve yenilikçi tarafını tam bir ahenkle sentezleyebiliyor. İki, İstanbul diğer şehirlerden farklı bir özelliğe sahip. Şöyle anlatmak isterim. Binlerce yıllık insanlık tarihi boyunca ticaret yapmanın şekli gerçekten değişti. Ama İstanbul'un dış ticaretin merkez olma özelliği hiç değişmedi. Çünkü İstanbul değişimlere başarıyla adapte oluyor, yenilikleri bir saldırı olarak değil, kendini geliştirecek bir unsur olarak görüyor. İşte bu yüzden İstanbul dün de ticaretin merkeziydi, bugün de. Yarın da önemli bir merkez olmaya devam edecek. İstanbul Ticaret Odası olarak biz Dünya Pazarlama Zirvesi'ni İstanbul'da toplayıp bunun altını bir kez daha çiziyoruz. Bu zirveyi bunun için İstanbul'da düzenliyoruz. Söz değişimden açılmışken pazarlamada da değişimin altını çizmek isterim. Teknoloji, dijitalleşmenin en üst düzeye çıktığı günümüzde küreselleşme olgusuyla birlikte tüm ülkeleri, toplumları ve ekonomileri derinden değiştirip dönüştürmekte. Bu gelişmelerden pazarlama da radikal bir şekilde etkileniyor. Söz gelimi son 20 yılda konvansiyonel sanayi yeni bir marka çıkaramadı. Ama yeni teknoloji kendi markalarıyla bu dönemde öne çıktı. Hepinizin bildiği YouTube'dan Facebook'a kadar birçok yeni markayla tanıştık. Uzmanlar önümüzdeki 50 yıl içinde teknolojik gelişmelerin belirlediği bir süreç yaşanacağını ifade ediyorlar. Öyle ki sürücüsüz otomobiliniz evdeki akıllı buzdolabınızdan eksik olan malzemeleri öğrenecek, sonra bunu alışveriş yaptığınız markete bildirecek ve hazır etmesini isteyecek, eve giderken de uğrayıp siparişleri alacak. Böylesi bir dünyada satış ve pazarlama etkinliğini kaybediyor veya acaba kaybediyor mu? Dolayısıyla pazarlama da kendine yeni bir çıkış yolu bulmak zorunda. Pazarlama kendisini değişimlere göre yeniden inşa etmek, tasarlamak mecburiyetinde. İşte İstanbul zirvesinde bu yapılacak, pazarlamanın tam da bu yapılacak. Pazarlamanın geleceği İstanbul'da tasarlanacak. Bu yüzden zirvenin ana temasını pazarlamanın geleceği İstanbul'da tasarlanıyor diye belirledik. Değerli katılımcılar, şuna inanıyoruz. Pazarlama her şeydir. Her şey pazarlamadır. Bu ilkeden ilhamla doğru araçlar kullanarak son 20 yıldır yaşanan çaresizlikten çıkılabilir. İşte bu zirvenin içinde bunun işaretlerini göreceğinizi ümit ediyoruz. Romalı yazar Petronius, malın kadar varsın diyor. Biz de bu sözün anlamını İstanbul için şöyle değiştirmek istiyoruz. İstanbul'da bu sözün pazarlaman kadar varsına dönüştüğünü düşünüyoruz. Çünkü pazarlamanın babası Philip Kotler, İstanbul'da pazarlamanın geleceğini inşa edecek. Konuşmamın son bölümünde Dünya Pazarlama Zirvesini neden İstanbul'da düzenlediğimizi sizlerle paylaşmak isterim. İstanbul'da düzenliyoruz çünkü Türkiye'nin en büyük firmaları, en büyük markaları bu şehirde. Çünkü Türkiye ekonomisinin yarısını bu şehir temsil ediyor. Türkiye'nin dış ticaretinin yine yaklaşık yarısını bu şehirdeki firmalar yapıyor. 2017 yılını dikkate aldığımızda İstanbul tek başına 231 milyar dolarlık gayri safi milli hasıla üretti. Bu üretimiyle İstanbul bir ülke olsaydı dünya ülkeleri içinde 46. sırada olurdu. Daha da önemlisi Türkiye şirketlerinin yaklaşık 1/3 İstanbul'da. Böylesine güçlü ve önemli bir şehir içinde çalışan İstanbul Ticaret Odası olarak biz de bu zirveyle birlikte hem İstanbul markasını hem de İstanbul'dan çıkacak markaları dünya sıralamasına sokmak istiyoruz. Amacımız marka şehir İstanbul'un içinden ekonominin her sektöründen yeni markaların çıkmasını sağlamak. Mevcut markaların ise daha da yukarı tırmanmasını olanaklı hale getirmek. Dünya şirket endekslerine baktığımızda maalesef sıralamaya giren Türk şirketi göremiyoruz. Türkiye'yi başarıyla temsil eden Türk Hava Yolları'ndan Beko'ya, Mavi Cins'ten Simit Sarayı'na kadar çok markamız var. Ama biz bu markaların zirvede olmasını istiyoruz. Bize göre Türkiye'nin artık dünyanın ilk 500 şirket arasında değil, ilk 100 şirket arasında markaları olmalıdır. Çünkü bu şehirden yükselen her marka İstanbul'a da Türkiye'ye de büyük değer katacaktır. Can alıcı soru şudur. Peki bunu nasıl başaracağız? Bunun için sadece şirketlerimizin değil, ülkemizin de bir pazarlama stratejisi, bir marka eylem planı olması gerektiğini düşünüyoruz. Gerekli yapısal reformlar tamamlanarak rekabetçi bir ortam tesis edilmelidir. Bugüne kadar yapılanları takdirle karşılıyoruz ama daha da ileri gitmemiz gerektiğini düşünüyoruz. Bu yüzden diyoruz ki Dünya Pazarlama Zirvesi'nde konuşulacak fikirler sadece işletmelerimize ve girişimcilerimize değil, kamuya da çok önemli ufuklar açacaktır. İnanıyorum ki bu zirve pazarlama anlayışı ile İstanbul'un yıldızının parladığı an olacaktır. Bu anlamda bu aşamada Fransız yazar Lamartine'in bir sözünü sizle paylaşmak istiyorum İstanbul'la ilgili. Bu şehir öyle bir yerdir ki her bakışta sanki yeniden değişir. Her değiştikçe de önümüze yeni ve daha taze bir güzellik çıkar. Bana göre bu güzelliklerden bir tanesi de İstanbul'un pazarlama gücüdür. Pazarlamaya getireceği yeni anlayıştır. Yeni anlayışın başlangıç noktasının bugün yaptığımız Dünya Pazarlama Zirvesi olduğunu düşünüyoruz. Bu duygular içinde konuşmamı bitirirken Dünya Pazarlama Zirvesi'nin tüm katılımcılar için verimli geçmesini diliyorum. Yeni ve güçlü markalara yol açmasını bekliyorum. Zirveye yoğun ilgi gösteren siz değerli katılımcılara, Türkiye'nin dört bir tarafından gelip zirveye katılanlara, pazarlamanın önemini bilen sizlere, şahsım ve İstanbul Ticaret Odası adına tek tek teşekkür ediyor. Katılımlarından dolayı Profesör Philip Kotler ve değerli arkadaşlarına bir kez daha İstanbul'a hoş geldiniz diyor. Hepinizi saygıyla selamlıyorum.
Evet, İstanbul Ticaret Odası Yönetim Kurulu Başkanı Sayın Şekip Avdagiç'e teşekkürlerimizi sunuyoruz. Ve şimdi de pazarlama duayeni, World Marketing Summit'in kurucusu, Profesör Philip Kotler'ı, marka aktivizminin geleceği başlıklı konuşmasını yapmak üzere huzurlarınıza davet ediyorum. Now, it's a great pleasure and honor for us to invite Professor Philip Kotler to the stage to give his speech. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, thank you.
It's great to meet you.
I'm so delighted at the success shown in marketing the event that has attracted so many distinguished people to this event. Event marketing itself is one of those things we do. So already your talent in marketing is very obvious. Now, I will make some statements about marketing and making sure that marketing and sales are not confused. Sales have taken place through 8,000 years of history, longer than that. Goes back to Adam and Eve. Goes back to the snake influencing Eve to convince Adam to eat an apple. So sales has been present all the time. Did you know that marketing is only 110 years old? Not markets. Markets have existed, but marketing as a science and an art is very new. And what it does, and Peter Drucker, who's my saint, Peter Drucker's book, you should keep reading his books about managing a business. He made the statement that the aim of marketing, ideally, is to make selling unnecessary. Now, if he's correct, then marketing cannot be sales. Sales are important. But what he's saying is you should come up with ideas to solve problems that people have. People have needs. They're not being met all the time. And a good innovator or entrepreneur sees an opportunity and creates a solution. And if it's very good as a solution, people line up to buy it. You don't have to have a salesman. All you have to do is someone to take the orders. So Peter meant that if your mentality is to create a beautiful solution for people, they will line up to buy it without you needing any sales effort whatsoever. Now, marketing has many, many dimensions to it, and that's why we are delighted in bringing some very professional experts on aspects of marketing. For example, one expertise that we need is on pricing. Are we smart when we price our product? Have we already thought through the position of our product before we price it? The price is going to be a sign of what you think your product is worth. And we will be glad to share with you some ideas on pricing. But I think most of you are more interested in what does it take to create a brand. We're living in a world of brands. I was just coming back from Milan, and there's a very famous place, it's the cathedral in Milan, Italy, and they just are so excited because 2 stores were open in this high-traffic historical part of Milan, and they're excited because one of them is Starbucks coming to Italy, and the second is the other store is Apple coming to Italy in Milan. So those are powerful brands. And the question arises, how much time does it take to build a brand? How much patience do you need? How do you know if it's working? What are the metrics that tell you that you've already succeeded in getting people aware of the brand, but they're still not buying it? What are the metrics that allow us to know whether we should continue to push our brand or give it up and start fresh? We're going to talk about that to you. Now, I have many things to talk about, and so do my collaborators. I'm going to talk about a thing that I call brand activism. And I got very interested in working on the idea that a brand has a choice. A brand could just tell what it is without taking any position about what your company believes in. We, in fact, don't, in many cases, I buy a brand and I don't know much about the company. I don't know what the company cares about, what it stands for. And now more companies, at least in my country and in some other countries, believe they want to add a purpose. They want to start not with creating a brand name, but creating a purpose for what they want to launch as a brand. And they may want to even say that our brand is not only about satisfying that purpose, but we care also about the climate, that we want to be active and let people know that we are humane. We care about society. We're a company that not only wants to do a good job, but we want to express what we think about improving the world. So we call this brand activism. Let me show you what we mean. Societies are facing a great number of difficult social problems. You know, there's hunger, there's poverty, there's crime, there's all kinds of social problems. And normally, government is supposed to take care of the social problems. But governments, in many cases, are underfunded. They don't have the money to take care of it. Even when they have the money, they are divided. In my own country, we have a gridlock. The 2 political parties don't work together to solve social problems. What is the implication? The implication is that someone has to work on the social problems, and maybe increasingly business should care about making the country a better country. Now, business has its own problems, and if I say to a businessman, "Are you socially responsible?" He'll say, "Yes, I've heard about corporate social responsibility, but I have enough problems. I can't take care of the world's problems." Well, more and more companies are beginning to say that there are certain problems you should show you care about. One of them is climate. And as you know, you should be running a triple line when you decide on your plan. You don't only want to maximize profits, which is the conventional thing that drives your business. That's the first line. The second one is the people line. You want to run a good company. You want your employees to be happy in your company, because if they're not happy, you're going to have turnover, you're going to have a lot of cost, and you won't get the quality of the people that you wanted. So your business has to be people-oriented as well as profit-oriented. The third thing, it must be planet-oriented. In other words, you are either helping the planet or you're hurting the planet. And so every company should take perhaps a position that they have a set of values. I mean, if I ask one of you about your business, and then if I ask you this question, what have you contributed to your society in Turkey? And you say, well, I make good products. Well, that's a good contribution. But is it something else you're doing to make life better for everyone? See, the purpose of marketing and a purpose of many businesses is to make people happier and more satisfied. So I'm going to therefore talk about this. I think businesses are also an agent of change, and they have to take some responsibility. Now, you may say, I'm doing that. Look at the money I've given to good causes. I have people knocking on my door for some help, and I'm very generous. That's fine. That's called philanthropy. And we appreciate that, but it's not enough. In many cases, we want to buy from brands that stand for something. Have you thought about that? Have you really thought about, should your brand stand for something? So let's move on. Here are two quotations from very important people. The first person, Stephen, is part of a company called Reputation. It is the Reputation Institute. By the way, it's interesting that there is an agency that will help your company improve its reputation. And here's what he said. He said, it's not enough to just have a high-quality product and deliver results on Wall Street. Social activism, aligning with communities, what you do to make the world a better place, that's the metric. And that may come as a shock, that we have to make the society a place that we contribute to. Larry Fink is probably one of the top billionaires in the world. He runs the BlackRock hedge fund, and he surprised all of the hedge fund people with this remark. Society is demanding that companies serve a social purpose. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. There are companies that stand for something. Starbucks, Unilever, Levi Strauss, Nike, Body Shop, Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, and the list goes on. Companies that we not only buy from, but we are almost advocates of. We have become fans, just like you're maybe a fan of a sports team. I could be a fan of a company. I'm a fan of Apple. I'm a fan of a lot of companies where actually, when I'm a fan, that company doesn't have to do much marketing. Do you know the best marketing is done by the advocates, the fans of the company? So, is your company creating fans or just customers? Yes, you're trying to get engaged customers, loyal customers, but do they ever recommend you? Some of these great companies have figured out, I don't have to spend much on marketing because my fans are doing the marketing for me. Very high aspiration in that thought. The company's task is to find a relevant social problem that its customers and stakeholders and employees are thinking about. So I have this diagram, And it says, make sure you don't bring shame to your product. You want to bring favorable view. But look what happens sometimes in a business. This is an illustration of a company that makes a very important product, an EpiPen, where a person who is allergic to peanuts can die from not being told that he was eating peanuts. And he better immediately use the EpiPen and inject himself. So someone bought that company and had the nerve to move the price from $100, because it's sort of like a monopoly, to $600. Shame, shame, shame. This is regressive activism. In other words, a brand could be active in the wrong way. No brand wants to be doing that to its customers. I'm in favor of progressive activism and so on. Look, at least make your brand neutral. If you don't want to express any value in your brand, don't say anything about values. But I think if you really love your company and you really believe you are to be loved, deserve to be loved, you should express what you care about. So here's a list we use in the new book called Brand Activism. At the bottom, you'll see a range all the way from evil, which I gave you an illustration of brand shaming, to exploiting companies, to faking companies, some that say, no, just don't be evil, citizen companies, purpose brands, brand activists. You may recognize some of these brands. A number of them are sort of not really on the progressive side. There's a few, look at the ones that are on the progressive side. I can give you story after story about how admired those companies are to be by their customers and their employees. One point that is important, you're in the market for good employees. You're going to be hiring more and more millennials. One reason is you need digital people. Your organization, as a small or medium-sized business, is without even a person who's a digital native and so on. And yet you're hearing, and should be hearing, that marketing will be increasingly digital. And you're without digital people. So you go out to hire. And you find out that the digital people are in scarce supply. And they want to go to a company that has a purpose, that has values. That's the new generation. The millennials want to be, not being, they don't want to spend their time just putting some food in a box. They want to feel good about what they're doing. If you're going to compete for millennials and digital people, you've got to have purpose in your firm. And so that is a display of what is happening. So if you're going to be a brand activist, you can be activists in the social sense, the legal sense, the environmental sense, and so on and so forth. And in the book, what we do, and it gets complicated, of course, you've got to make choices. So, for example, if you are going to decide, I don't want to only have a good brand, but I want it to have a purpose, and the purpose is social activism. Notice that that means you may be saying, we believe so much in education that we're going to make the point of our support being to support educational development. We're going to be supporting hospitals. Do you have a cause? I guess I'm asking, if I see the CEO, I say, does your company have some area that you represent, you want to see improved? That's your cause. And maybe you don't, maybe you should have a cause. Maybe you have to think carefully about what are the risks of choosing a cause. Maybe some causes may make you very liked by a large group, but disliked by another group. Some of you may say, I'm not going to do that because I want everyone to like me, so I'll have no cause. I would rather say, go for it. Go for some cause which says that you care about society and you want Turkey to be one of the best countries in the world to live in and to be in. So, questions for your company. I'm going to end with these questions. Has your company ever been a brand activist? If so, what was the social problem that you were addressing in addition to whatever you make, whether you're making clothing or you're in the construction business? What was the issue? If your company has not been a brand activist, would you recommend that it becomes a brand activist? Oh, yes, thanks for the idea, Mr. Kotler. I'm going to think about what problem I want to identify that bothers my family personally and my friends. And then the question will be, what will be the rewards and risks for the activist position your brand might take? And think carefully about that, and then hopefully it's helped you build a brand. Now let me just say something about brand building. I was even asked the question, what's more important, branding or marketing? You know, the overall idea is marketing. Branding is part of building success for your product. You could sell it you can sell your product just on low price, but if you can get it to be seen as a good brand or a powerful brand, that will help you make more money. But how long does it take to build a brand? And what goes into making a strong brand? These are things we want to talk about. I can tell you how Starbucks did it. Starbucks did it by deciding that they have a mission. And the mission is to make not just a fine coffee, but a great coffee experience. It's going into a place called Starbucks, sitting down or standing in line, getting one of 100 types of coffee, and also meeting your friends there, and they don't charge you for sitting there, and all that. And then they realize there's other coffee shops. What's the points of difference between us and the other coffee shops? And what's the points of similarity? You must be similar to what other coffee shops do, but you have to have points of difference. Every brand can point to 3 or 4 reasons why they're doing it differently and better. So building a brand also involves having a character and a personality in your business that can be projected. And this is not the time to get you into building a brand, but let's say that there are experts. Often the advertising agencies will say, oh, you need a stronger brand and you need 30-second commercials. It's not that easy. That's not what, that would come way after. In fact, we may in the digital world not do 30-second commercials, especially if they're being blocked on your computer too, and people aren't even watching commercials. So the main point is you've got to understand that brand building is an important key process, and it's much more than choosing a name and some color like yellow for Kodak or Caterpillar and another color for another company. It's so much more. And we will try to help you understand. We want Turkey to be a country of strong brands around the world. Some of your neighboring countries, particularly Italy, has done that. Italy has done that. I walk right through your airport and I see Italian brands. It could be the Chinese airport. There should be Turkish brands that I can pass by in the airport. That's our hope for you. That's our hope in working, if we can, with you. So thank you very, very much. We'll move on to the next set of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kotler, for this precious presentation and speech. Teşekkürlerimizi sunuyoruz. Sayın Profesörümüz Philip Kotler'a bu güzel sunumundan ötürü değerli konuklarımız. Ve World Marketing Summit İstanbul bir başka konuşmayla devam ediyor şimdi. Profesör Moran Sörf'ü davet ediyorum huzurlarınıza. Nörobilimin pazarlamadaki öncü rolü başlıklı sunumunu yapmak üzere. Now I would like to invite Professor Moran Sörf to the stage to give his speech.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Sörf.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to apologize in advance to the translators in the back, because no matter how hard I try, I always get told by my students that I speak too fast. So it might happen this morning as well. I'll do my best, but it might happen. So what I want to talk to you about in the next 30 minutes is a new idea that I think will be part of your life in the next 5, maybe 10 years. And the idea is that there are ways by which we can understand our customers, understand our own decision-making process, and make different ideas in marketing propagate, not by just looking at our customers, asking them questions, looking at their digital footprint, but actually by studying their brains. The idea is that every decision you make, every choice you make, every emotion you feel, every desire you have, all your values, the choice of pricing, the desire to buy or not buy something, they all happen in this 3-pound entity between your ears that all of you have. And this means that if you understand how it works, we can understand you better. If we can actually look inside your brain and understand how you think, we can understand what brands mean to you, how they decide to like something or not, how your customer create value in things, what would make them value something or not, and ultimately how a choice happens. So for this morning, for instance, one choice that I can talk about is a simple choice like this. Imagine you go to the supermarket, you want to buy a toothpaste, there's a shelf full of toothpaste. Maybe there's one that you really like, a local brand on the left, an international brand on the right, and you're about to make a choice. Your mind is racing. You ask yourself, I want to make a choice that is unbiased, so what should I do? And you maybe make a table in your mind. And you say, well, this one is more expensive. This one has a nicer package. This one is a little bigger. This one has a minty taste. And at the end of the day, you say, okay, I'm going to choose, say, the one on the left. The question is, A, is that all that came to your mind when you made a choice, all the parameters you used, or there are others? If someone asked you later on to explain, could you narrate your thinking? And could I change your mind? Is there anything that I could have done in this moment that will actually make you go and choose the right? So the reality is that marketing has been trying to explain this moment for a while. And in the last 20 years, there's a surge of psychologists going into marketing and trying to explain your thinking. This field called behavioral economics has had a surge in the last 20 years where a lot of psychologists have won Nobel Prizes for saying that they could look into your behavior and explain your biases, explain your thinking, maybe even predict why you do things that make no sense, like buy stuff that's more expensive just because you have an affinity for a brand, even though it's internally the same as the other brand. But there's a problem there, because time and again, what came out from looking at people is the understanding that we're not really good in narrating our thinking. That if I ask you a question of why you do what you do, oftentimes, did you understand anything I said until now? I start again. Thank you so much for coming here. I'm Moran, and I'll talk to you about the brain. So here is an example of that. A few years ago, a figure like that came out, and this figure spoke about an interesting effect, which is, in many countries, people are asked, let's say you die, and we can use your organs to save someone else's life. We can harvest your heart or even your retina and help someone else who's still alive. Would you agree to do that? Many countries were offered, when they go to get their driver's license, the option to fill a little kind of square there that says, yes, I'm going to do that. And what came out is that some countries are really generous with their organs. People say, if I die, I'm really happy to help someone else have a better life. And some are very selfish and they don't. And you can see here the graphs of countries like Sweden, Portugal, Poland, Hungary, who are very generous. People there really are willing to help others if they die. And countries that seem very selfish, like Denmark, Netherlands, United Kingdom, and Germany. Now, if you think of those countries, in many ways, they are similar. We think that they say the Germans and the Austrians are similar in many things, but there's a big difference here. The Austrians are very generous, the Germans not as much. UK and France, they think that they're very different, but from our perspective, they're very similar, and you can see a big difference. The French, very generous, the British, not as much. Well, without going into the details of this one, what came out is that what drove this behavior more than anything was how the question was asked in the form. In some countries, the question was, will you agree to do that? Sign here. And in some countries say, will you not agree? Sign here. And just by reversing the question, sign if you don't agree, or sign if you agree, people actually are placed in different locations, and this drives everything. Now, this is interesting to behavioral economists. What is interesting to neuroscientists is not why you end up choosing what you choose, but how you explain it. So if you grab a guy who just leaves the room, and you ask him, you know, you just agreed to donate your organs. Why do you do that? They're going to tell you a story. Their story is going to be, you know, I always wanted to be very, very generous and help others, and I understand that if I'm dead, the least I can do is help someone else. That is why I chose this thing. If you find a guy who chose to not donate his organs, and you ask him just when he's about to leave, why did you choose that? He might say something like, you know, I don't really trust doctors. Maybe I'm going to be still a little bit alive when they're going to choose to harvest my heart. That's why I'm not going to do that. And even though we know that the driver for their answers is not at all their thinking, it's just the way we ask the question, people will always come up with an answer. They're going to think that they know what they do, and they're going to give you an answer. And that is a problem with marketing. You think about focus groups, you think about surveys, you think about your customers, you ask them questions, they're always going to give you an answer. They always think they know themselves. But more and more, we know that they don't. That people have difficulty narrating their thinking, and that their answers are somewhat inaccurate, especially in fields like healthcare or fashion or athletics, things that people really have dissonance between how they think and what they are. Christmas is coming. In the US, there's a spike in people signing up for the gym. Right around Christmas. What they say is, you know, last year I didn't go to the gym much, but next year I'm going to be amazing. Every day. There's actually a gym in Los Angeles that when you show up in the beginning of the year, they offer you a deal where they ask you to give them in advance $750, and they tell you every day you show up, we're going to give you $2 back. So if you come every day, you're going to get all your money plus more from us. And they make a fortune because people really think it's a great idea. This year I'm going to be great. And somehow they don't end up doing that. Think of many people who buy jeans for the skinny version of themselves. Right now I'm size 8, but I really am deep inside a size 2, so I should buy a jeans for that size and just rise up to my 2 weight. Alarm clocks, a good example. Many of you go to sleep at midnight, set the alarm to 6 a.m., thinking tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do all the things I have to do, all those emails and chores and readings. And when we wake up at 6 a.m., we're different people. Suddenly, we don't remember who this guy was who set the alarm at midnight. What was he thinking? And then we have a button called snooze that allows us to just, for 5 minutes, give ourselves a little bit more time, because in 5 minutes, everything is going to be different. And the reality is that we all can be subject to this. It's very easy to take every person in this room and show you how easy it is for your mind to play tricks on you, for your mind to think that you're better than you are, or for your mind to explain things that aren't even true. For example, in an experiment that I ran with 2 colleagues from Sweden just this year, we did this very simple experiment that showed people how they are prone to explaining things that are not true time and again. We bring people to the lab, we tell them, we're going to have you make decisions that are very simple. We're going to ask you who you find more attractive. Not too complicated, very easy to think. You don't know any of those people. We're just going to show you 2 cards and ask you to tell me who you find more attractive. So imagine yourself, you come into the lab, someone sits in front of you, shows you 2 pictures, and asks you, who do you find more attractive, the guy on the right or the guy on the left? Let's say you say that the guy on the right is more attractive. Then we give you the card that you picked, and we ask you to explain why you chose this person. And you might say, I really like his stern look. We say, fantastic, keep the cards. Here are 2 new cards with 2 different people. Again, make a choice, right or left. You make a choice, we give you the card, and you explain why you chose this thing. This is what you do for about 1 hour. But there's a trick in this experiment. Every now and then, say every 20 trials or so, the guy that gives you the card doesn't give you the one that you chose, he gives you the other card. So he tricks you. You say you want this one, and he gives you the other one. And 2 interesting things happen. The first thing is that people rarely notice that the card they received is not the card that they wanted. But even more interesting in the context of our talk this morning is that people take the card that they didn't choose, hold it in their hand, and explain to us why this was their choice. So you choose A, I give you B, you take B, and you immediately explain to me why this happened. Think about this in the context of marketing. All of the choices we make, we think we know what they are, but then here it is a case where I replace the choice, and you come up with an answer, and you believe it. Think about the example we spoke about earlier with toothpaste. You go to the supermarket, you choose the local brand, you put it in your basket, and you go on to buy more things, milk and bread and other things. And at some point between the moment you made the choice and the checkout, I sneak into your basket, and I replace the choice of toothpaste with the other one. If it's not really important for you, if you don't really care about toothpaste, you're going to miss that I replace them. You're going to buy whatever I put there. But more than that, if someone stopped you on the way outside and said, I'm for a marketing firm and I want to understand how you made a choice, explain to me why you chose this thing, you're going to come up with an answer. You're going to say, well, I always cared about international brands and the minty taste is really important for me, and this is it. Not only that, once you start explaining it, you're going to start believing it more and more. So if tomorrow you show up again, you might actually buy this thing just because you had to explain it the day before. Which means that many times, a mischievous way to do marketing is to just have you end up with something, and you're going to start explaining to yourself why this was your choice all the time. This makes my students work with T-shirts that we always use to remind ourselves that we don't really know how we think, and the T-shirt says, don't believe everything you think. Because the reality is that we don't know how our mind works. We have a very little grasp of this complex mindset. We have access to only a small portion of it. Here's an example. In the US, there are a lot more dentists whose name is Dennis. This seems ridiculous, that the name of someone would be similar to their profession, but the reality is that this is the case. And when people come to explain that, they think that the reason that a lot of dentists choose to be dentists is that somewhere in their life, they just kind of walk around and they hear someone calling their name and they look and they say, why, sorry, why did you call me? Oh, you spoke about dentists. Sorry, it sounded to me like you talked about my name. And they move on, and by the time they're 30 and they have to choose a profession, they probably heard a lot more about dentists than the average person, so they actually choose themselves to become dentists. They just have a little bit more weight to this profession. But none of them will tell you, well, I chose to be a dentist because it sounded like my name. They're going to always think that there was a different reason for that. Which means that our unconscious mind governs a lot of our thinking. And when we speak only with the conscious one. So can neuroscience actually give us access to the other part? The reality is that in the last 10 years, there are more and more companies that offer people like you, marketing executives and brand managers, ways to understand your customers by looking at the unconscious part rather than the conscious part and understand how you think. Examples would be ways to look at your face while you interact with a brand and understand what you feel about it. In your face, you have about 150 muscles that you can move, but only about 30 of those muscles are muscles you can control yourself. Most of your face just moves on its own. If I told you right now to laugh, you can fake a laughter by smiling, but it would be very hard for you to really laugh truly, because a true laugh involves also moving those muscles next to your temples, and those muscles are controlled by your brain in a way that you don't have access to yourself. So when you actually truly laugh, different muscles in your face move. Now, with simple cameras, we can actually have a client of yours look at, say, a commercial, look at your brand packaging, talk about your brand, and we can analyze their face and know what their mind is controlling in a way that tells us what they're feeling. So we can give you immediately a report that says, this person feels a little bit embarrassed when she talks about your brand, or a little bit confused when she speaks about your positioning, or a little bit irritated when she has to explain something. Or she answers your survey, but she doesn't really know. She gave a 7 on the questionnaire of, say, the Net Promoter Score, but she didn't really know if it's 7 or 8 or 9. And for you, it's a big difference, but for her, it was confusing. Another way that people like myself work with companies like you is by looking at your eyes. Turns out that your eyes aren't just moving randomly. If we want to know what you see, we can actually predict now where your eyes are going to go by studying your brain. When you look at things in the world, many times you choose what to see with your brain before your conscious mind knows it. For example, I'm going to show you now a grid of images on the screen. And there's going to be one image that would be standing out. I wanted to see how fast your brain sends your eyes to the thing that stands out. If you ask to find what it is, it's going to take you a fraction of a second. In fact, by the time you become conscious of what it is, your eyes have already been there. Let's try it. Try to find out the thing that stands out in 3, 2, 1. The face just stood up. Our brain comes equipped with a device that detects faces very, very fast. And if there's a face there, our eyes are going to go there. Now, many of you who worked in advertising know that it's not surprising to you that if you put a model on the picture, someone's going to go to her or him and look at them. But for instance, what neuroscience taught us in the last couple of years is that this is not enough. If you're trying to, say, sell a phone, and you have a beautiful model in the picture, everyone's going to look at the beautiful model. Not many people are going to look at the phone unless you have the model gaze at the phone, in which case people's eyes are going to follow the gaze to the phone. Just this little thing comes from neuroscience that can explain how people see things, and you would never be able to narrate that. If I ask you, why did you look here and not there, you wouldn't know why. Your eyes just went there. It's because your eyes have this desire to see faces compared to anything else. Here's another example that just will show you how different it is. I'm going to show you another grid of images. And again, there's going to be something that stands out. See how difficult it is to find it when it's not a face. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Takes longer. There's a church there, around many, many cars. Our brains aren't equipped with a device that detects churches the way they detect faces. Now, just by studying things like that, by studying what drives your eyes early on, we can start making predictions. We can take images like these and apply a computer model, that's what you see in the bottom, that will predict where your eyes are. So I'm flashing pictures one after the other, and you can see how good it is in predicting where your eyes are when you see those pictures. And this is by studying people's brains. It's not by studying people's eyes. We look at people's brain, and we can tell what will make you draw your attention to things. And once we learn that, we can actually take magazine covers and start describing where your eyes are going to go if you flash this cover. What we know for sure is that if you walk by an island supermarket and you've seen something, we don't know if you're going to buy it or not. But if you haven't seen it, you surely will not buy it. And now we can start predicting what you will see. We can look at websites and try to predict where you should put the labels or the ads so they can get more attention. We can actually figure out what font would make you care more. And again, those are things people don't know how to answer. You can ask them, but they have no access to the part of the brain that likes particular colors or shapes, and now the brain can tell us that. But ultimately, we can not only look at your eyes or your face, we can actually go into your brain and see how you think about things. and really see not what you see, but what you get. So if you were to study a brain, what you will see that if we zoom into a brain, and we go deep into one, there is inside a forest of little cells, we call them neurons, and they have a language that they speak in that sounds something like this. This sound that you hear is the sound of one brain cell speaking to others and telling them, I care about the world. And if we can use devices that listen to those cells in a very fine sound, we can start understanding what your brain cells tell one another. And we can see whether you care about something, whether the pricing is too high for you, whether you feel reward when you look at this thing, whether you're emotional about this, whether you remember what you're seeing. So just devices like this one is called EEG, that you can put on your head, will allow a neuroscientist that works with you to start telling you things about the experience that your customers have when they go to the brain. I want to show you a few examples of what we can do with it. So in a study that a colleague of mine and I did a few years ago, we looked at the brains of many people. We tried to see how similar they are. Turns out that the more similar brains are, the more interesting the content is. So right now when I speak to you, if I'm really, really interesting, then all of your brains would look very similar, because I'm taking over your brains when I speak. If I'm very boring, then one of you might think about her grocery shopping, another one might think about things that she has to do tomorrow, and you're very different. So just by looking at how similar the brains are when you, for instance, watch a movie, I can know how good the movie is. Here's an example. What you see here is a little Hitchcock films, and the brain that you see on the left with those blue dots tells you how similar the brains are. The more blue dots, the more similar people are. And you can see that there are scenes where the gun is about to fire where all the brains look alike. What can we do with that? We can actually start studying your brain when you watch content and understand how it affects you. In a study I did a few years ago for a big movie theater, we had a room full of people like you, all sit with devices on their brain while they watch a commercial. We tried to see how engaging it is. So what people saw was this commercial. And this yellow line that you see indicates how similar their brains were. Let me say it again. The yellow line that you see here tells me how similar everyone's brains were when they saw this thing. The higher it is, the more interesting and engaging the clip is. So if the line was very, very high, it meant that people are very, very engaged, that all the brains look very similar. If the line is very low, then all brains look very different, and it means that the commercial is not doing well. And now I can actually assess the commercial second by second. And what you see here is nothing. Pretty much a flat line, nothing interesting happens. But when we said, let's take all the brains in the room and divide them by gender. Let's look at the brains of women and how similar they are to each other versus the brain of men. You get very different results. I'm going to show you the same data now. Now you're going to see two lines. One is men, one is women. Try to figure out yourself who is who. So now we can take a room full of people and learn second by second how content changes their brain, what they find engaging or not, without asking a single question. I don't have to stop the movie and ask you questions. I don't have to wait for the end of the movie and ask you about scenes that you may or may not remember. I can have you do something and study your brain in real time and predict things about it. In the US, the Super Bowl has ads like this that last about 30 seconds, and 30 seconds ad would be about $3 million. If they could cut the ad by, say, 5 seconds, it would go to $2 million. Now I can actually look at your brain and figure out what seconds there are less important, less engaging, cut them or change things until I get the perfect balance of what will activate your memories, what will be emotional for you, what you will care about, what will drive you, motivate you to care and maybe buy afterwards. All of this without asking a single question. In the last 2 years, we worked with YouTube on trying to predict something that is really important for their business. Many of you have gone to YouTube to watch a clip. You maybe want to see a clip by Justin Bieber. You type Justin Bieber. You expect to see this, but instead you see this, an ad that appears for a few seconds before the YouTube clip begins. The ad runs for a few seconds, and then you can skip it. And it turns out that most ads, over 99.9% of ads on YouTube, get skipped at the 5 seconds mark, meaning people don't want to see them. But some, 0.01, actually get seen all the way to the end. What's unique to those? How can you make an ad that people will actually see on YouTube? For now, we don't have a good answer, but what we do have is a way to know whether your ad is in the category or not. What we do is basically take people's brains, scan their brain in the very first 5 seconds, and can tell you with high accuracy, your ad seems to be on the 0.1% or at the 99.9% just by looking at your brain for 5 seconds. We can start using that to really give you advice about the creative content. Here is an ad that was shown in the Super Bowl. This is version 1. What you see here is the ad. It's a commercial for a pet shelter. You see a little puppy. It goes in and out of the screen. The little blob that you see, the blob, the yellow one, indicates where people's eyes were. And the lines at the bottom are all kinds of readings from people's brains about how emotional it is, how memory is working, how much attention is driven, and so on. This was version 1. And what the pet shelter saw when they ran this one is that there's a lot of confusion. You see that there are moments where the eyes are divided between looking at the URL, the website, versus looking at the cute puppy, which means people might have missed the main message, which is you should go to this place to donate money. And when they came and started to look at it, what you could see is that you can actually shorten the ad to a little less time and keep more of the information. For instance, you can see that attention is dropping at the end because people's eyes are divided between 2 locations. What if I made sure that the puppy is on the screen at one point and the URL, the website, is there at a different point? What if I cut the moment where the puppy is out of the screen so I can make sure that things work well? Here's the final version, just based on neuroscience. Puppy is on the screen, emotion is high, attention is high. It goes on the screen for a second and comes back, shortening the time it's out of the screen because apparently this doesn't do anything for our engagement. Then leave the screen so the text could be there.
Wants to meet you.
Driving your memory, again emotions.
Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org.
And it's out of the screen to avoid confusion.
Adopt.
Importantly, if we ask people, how should we make the ad differently, they wouldn't have a sense. They might say, I don't know, I don't remember, I don't really know. And now we can look at their brain and figure out what works there. Where else can we go? We can go to understand your brand. So brand is something we all care about. And up to now, it was really hard for us to understand where brands sit in the brain. Where is this set of associations in your brain exist? Well, recently, colleagues of mine and myself were able to actually look at the brains of people when they see pictures of logos, of items, and actually find the cells in your brain that code the thinking of this thing. Here's an example. I'm going to show you now pictures of just people that you all know, and I'm going to play the sound of one brain cell in one person's head when they see the pictures. Try to see what this cell codes for. What makes this cell fire more than the usual? So this is a cell in one of our patients' brain that fires and codes the brand Marilyn Monroe. She is a brand. People know her. They have an association with her. They know what she stands for. And all of you, if you knew who Marilyn Monroe is, had cells in your brain that came to life at the same time that told you, aha, this is the brand. Now, for every brand that you represent, Nike, Adidas, McKinsey, Apple, McDonald's, you have brain cells that come to life when you think about them. So now, we can actually look at your brain and read how your brains get represented. We can even see if your brains are confused. Here's an example. On the screen, you see a picture that's flickering. And I can tell you already that your brains tell you something you don't know, but I know. In your brain, there's a cell that codes something, and it's firing and stopping, firing and stopping, because what you see here are actually two different pictures, not one, there's two different pictures, and they alternate. And there's only one thing that changes between the pictures. One thing that appears in one and not in the other. Raise your hand if you see this thing. Don't say, just raise your hand. I want to see how many of you see this thing that changes. So those of you who don't raise your hand right now, I can tell you that your brain already knows that. Your brain has a cell that codes things like Marilyn Monroe, and it fires and stops. Fires and stops, but it somehow doesn't tell you what the answer is. Here is the answer. You see the engine here in the center? In your brain, there were cells that coded engines, and they fired and stopped, but somehow they didn't tell you about this thing. But if a neuroscientist were looking at your brain, she would be able to tell that your brain is right now experiencing something. And this could be an engine, or it could be a BCG, or it could be Istanbul's climber brand that I learned about this morning. Here's another example. Here's another picture, and again, your brains see something and stop, see and stop, and you can ask yourself, why is my brain not telling me this thing? The world is full of brands. Right now, you see probably hundreds of brands in front of you. But not all of them actually get to conscious awareness. Now we can actually see which one of them penetrated your brain, which one did not. In this example, it's the little leaves in the corner. If you didn't see any of them, come to me afterwards. We have a surgery we can do that will help you. But the point is not that. The point is that in your brain, you have all kinds of cells we can look at. We can find cells for brains that are confusing, that are intentionally trying to replicate each other, and learn what is it about the brains that actually make you confuse them. And can I separate them? We can look at the brain and see if there are associations that make you move from one to another, and learn how to separate them or to make them more similar. We can look at the spokespeople for a brand and the brand itself and see if they align perfectly or not. All of that without being able to ask you, but just looking at your brain. The idea is that many times we have views about brands that we don't like. I put this quote that I really like that says that spam is spam because of bad targeting, and that's the reality. Every time you get a message that says, oh, this is spam, and you delete it, it's because someone didn't understand your brain. They didn't understand what you like. If it came from your mom or your best friend or your husband or wife, you wouldn't delete it. It's not spam. But somehow, we have a separation in our brain between things that we like and things we don't. The more brains are able to understand how you think, they can move from becoming spam to being something that you want. I want to end by something that I find the most interesting and important, but also the most alarming, that I wanted this community to think about before I leave, which is that we're now able to not just understand how your brain works, but also change things. The more we understand how thinking works in the brain and how things happen under the hood in ways that you don't understand yourself, we can actually start changing things to perfectly align with what you want without you knowing that. In the US, there's been a big scandal a few years ago in the election where companies like Cambridge Analytica were able to essentially sway people's votes by figuring out what they want and give them things that will change their minds. And the reality is that the bad side of marketing is that more and more we understand better and better how you think, often better than you understand yourself. And this means we can start changing behavior. The most alarming thing that I learned about is something that we did in a study a few months ago, where we realized that we can actually change your mind about things when you're sleeping. Turns out that when you go to sleep, your brain isn't just shut down, it's working, and there are specific windows when you're sleeping where your brain actually listens to the outside world, and if I target your brain with the right messaging in your sleep, particularly we do it right now with smells, we spray particular smells into your brain that make you create associations, you will wake up in the morning with a desire to buy this toothpaste or eat this food, not even knowing where it came from. And because of what I said earlier, that we always believe what we think, you would always think it was your choice. You would never say, hey, someone may have put this idea in my mind. Now, this is not new. Marketing on the bad side has been doing it for years now, putting ideas in people's minds and making them think that they're own. But right now, we're becoming more and more quantitative in being able to do that. And that is alarming. The good side is that we can actually change your behavior for good, make you stop smoking, teach you things when you go to sleep, so you wake up knowing Kung Fu, make you share experiences with people when you're sleeping, or even help you alleviate trauma or bad experiences. But the bad side is that our brain is programmable, and for the first time in history, we're becoming very, very good in understanding how to program it. And if you don't control how your brain is programmable, someone else will. Companies like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Amazon have done a lot of good things, but they got a lot of bad press in the last couple of years for being able to allow our brains to be programmable in ways that we don't control ourselves. And in this room, there are a lot of companies that could see the benefit of being able to, say, make a person go to sleep and wake up wanting to eat Captain Crunch. But when you're on the seller side, it's fantastic. When you're buying side, not so much. So it's the responsibility of all of this community, all of us, to also remember that our job isn't just to increase our sales, but also, as Professor Kotler said earlier, to think what world we want to be in. Because marketing is a powerful tool in the wrong hands that can be used to create great experiences or awful ones. And here's where I want to end with. The reality is that what neuroscience have told us in the last 10 years is that our mind is making decisions in many ways that we don't understand ourselves. This allows us to either exploit people and make them behave differently, or help them get a better value from their life. We can understand what they want and give it to them. And what I wanted you to leave this room is with the following thought. I don't know if tomorrow any of you is going to go and immediately turn all the marketing budgets to neuroscience budgets. I don't recommend that even. But I want you to leave this room knowing that there's a new field that's emerging that allows you to understand your customers in different ways that might be really important for you. To start looking at it, reading about it, maybe get to know a neuroscientist. So as this field becomes more mature, you have the ability to use it for your best interests. And what's hard for all of us to understand is the fact that we don't really understand ourselves better as much as we want. We all think that we know ourselves perfectly, and what neuroscience is telling you is that you don't. That there are things in your mind that you have no access to. And it's hard for us to believe. So I want to finish with an analogy that allows me every now and then to remember that we still have a way to go until we understand ourselves fully. And this is an analogy from 402 years ago, the year 1616, when Galileo Galilei pointed his telescope to the moons of Jupiter and observed their orbits. And what he saw was that the moons were not orbiting Jupiter in the way he predicted they were going to go. They were going in a different angle. And the only way for him to explain this was to actually change the entire heliocentric system, to change the entire making of the world we live in, and put the sun in the center, and put planet Earth as the third planet from the center. Now, this felt to him like a collapse of humankind. What does it mean that humans are not the center of the universe, that we're just one more planet out of many orbiting a different star? But he went after the equations and let it go. And when he did it, in the last 400 years, this allowed us to explore the wide reaches of the universe and understand how big the cosmos is and how much bigger the world we were in is. Understand a lot of things about the world that we couldn't understand otherwise. In the same way, neuroscientists are giving you a new tool to understand what's going on in our mind. And what we understand first and foremost is that we, the person who speaks for you, the person you think understands you better, the person you think is you, is only a minor part of your brain. That a lot of your decisions are made by someone else in your mind. And to understand yourself better, you have to actually change the understanding of your brain and put yourself as just one little part of your brain and realize that there is a different sun sitting there that drives your choices and explains the world. Once you start believing that, and you start studying your customers with this in mind, with understanding that what they say isn't fully the answer, but actually that you can use a different way to understand their brain and predict their choices in a different way, you will not only understand the most interesting thing in the universe, you will actually understand the thing that gives life meaning, that helps us find value in things, the things that make life have importance, significance, and meaning. The most interesting thing in the universe, which is us. Thank you very much for your time.
Profesör. Evet. Profesör Moran Sörf'e çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Thank you, Professor, for this amazing presentation and speech. Evet, kendisine de teşekkür ederek yerine uğurluyoruz. Dünyada her gün binlerce kaynaktan milyonlarca veri oluşturuluyor. Peki bu veriler pazarlamanın geleceğini nasıl etkiliyor ve dahası bizleri nasıl bir gelecek bekliyor? İşte bu soruların yanıtını almak üzere Profesör Luis Moutinho'yu sahneye alıyorum. Pazarlama ve Big Data başlıklı bir sunum gerçekleştirecek kendileri. And now I would like to invite Professor Luis Moutinho to the stage to give his speech.
I'm here.
Thank you, thank you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Günaydın.
Günaydın.
Merhaba. Hoş geldiniz. Nasılsın? İyi. Pleasure to be here. Very powerful presentation, Moran, well done. Next time we'll have everybody with devices, infrared spectroscopy, to analyze the brains at the surface cortex. Well done, but very, very potent value message. I'm very pleased to talk about big data, because the last 2 months, all of the October and November, people were kind enough to invite me, and I gave not as many as Philip, but I was in Macau, in Asia, I was in Europe, different locations, even the Isle of Madeira, and also through Philip in Chile and Bolivia. And it's interesting because every time I suggest a number of topics, all dealing with future trends, technology, robotics, marketing, branding, everything about the future. In some cases, I gave them 21 topics of recent presentations that I've done the last 6 months, and everybody selected artificial intelligence. So I gave the last 2 months talks about artificial intelligence, and now it's very refreshing that I'll be talking about big data, because big data is the raw material of AI. So we're going to have a prognostic peek, just to have a quick look at big data. I'll be talking about metadata, I'll be talking about little data. It's very important because most of you, the vast, vast majority, are coming from small and medium-sized companies. I'll be talking about small data, little data, not just big data. I'll be talking about how this relates to intention economy, small data. Also, I'll be talking about incredible sensor technology. At the moment, we've got a huge number of devices connected. They're expecting in 2 years from now we'll have 1 trillion sensors. I'll be talking about machine learning. Everything behind artificial intelligence is based on machine learning, even more deep learning. And of course, data is the raw material, as I told you. I'll be talking about applications in marketing. Well beyond the relational databases, we're talking about knowledge graphs. We're talking about virtualization of data. And of course, related to Moran's talk, we're talking about biometrics, facial coding, eye tracking. We're talking about sensors in our body. I'll be talking about that. And wearable sensors and blended reality, the morphing of everything together, data, web, wearable tech, etc. So these are more or less some of the topics that I want to do it, and I will do it in 30 minutes. But that is boring, my God. It's very boring data, especially when we're talking about zettabytes. Zettabytes 10 to the power of 21 zeros. Incredible, boring. But do you realize that IBM, Institute of Business Value, came up with a study saying that 90% of the data in the world has been created within the last 2 years. 2 years alone. Daunting, very, very frightening. But big data is about making predictions. It is now possible to leverage this large amount of terabytes, zettabytes data, messy, unstructured. 80% is unstructured data. Real world data that's coming from a myriad of sources, and so that allowed us to find patterns of data, movement of data, and of course, infer probabilities and analyze as well associations, correlations, etc. So we have more data speed, we have more storage capacity. Incredible. We have huge processing power. It's increasing all the time. We have more production tools, more social network usage, more online commerce, and also more mobile usage, new individual platforms, liquid media. Clearly, big data behind artificial intelligence, the rise of artificial intelligence, data models, processing power, big data. So big data to the fore is really the highlight here. For example, one of the applications, direct applications, is the rise of what we call metadata catalogs. Metadata will allow us to discover, to explore the data in a much more minutious way. We can have tags. The difference between this application of metadata is that it uses machine learning. If, for those of you that know about deep learning or machine learning, the feature extraction and the classification is separate in machine learning and together in deep learning. We create tags, and these tags will help us understand the connections, the relationships between data assets, and of course, minimizing the time that we are doing so in order to find the most accurate data. This will help people to analyze the data, to make it worth this time of digging this data, understanding and discovering, process of understanding and discovering. So machine learning, tags, searchable, what you call user interfaces, very, very important. So reduces the time it takes to trust the data, the time to find the data and accurately even query and ask questions in terms of the data file. So metadata is pretty much what you want to be, is in the eye of the beholder. Machine learning is really driving this accuracy, these very high accuracy levels. As more and more people are using apps, which are mainly artificial intelligence advisors, more data is collected, and machine learning will improve more and more and delivering more accurate advice. I'll come back to that. Another important issue is 2018 was really the year of data virtualization, meaning that you don't need to be a specialist. You don't need to have technical backgrounds. You can actually access the data for unlocking hidden concepts, understanding the data, and to reach some conclusions. So big data, little data. So huge amount of data. People talk about big data, but a lot of companies don't know how to deal with this data. The issue about gathering data coming from multiple sources, I'll show you in a minute, is incredible. But the analysis and the understanding of the data is a bit more difficult. And nowadays, some people are saying, wait a minute, but behind this huge amount of data, there are people, there are human beings, you and I. Would you like to be a unit of data storage? Probably not. Not 186. I don't think so. So we need to use ways to understand people. And that's why some people are recommending things like phenomenological research, ethnographic research, walk with me, in situ research. Incredible. Living in arrangements. I must apologize to the translators because probably I'm older than Moran, so I speak faster than him. But incredible little data. So we need a paradigm shift as well. Amongst all this disruption, we need a paradigm. It's not just big data, which just came to the fore very, very recently. We need to think about, if bigger is better, what about small data? Understanding human beings, being there. And that is interesting, because you can use also a slice of the data, for those of you that know in statistics what is bootstrapping, to analyze a fraction of the data through bootstrapping. But this is more than that. This is really little data sometimes matters much more than big data. And little data, small data, is much more connected with intention economy, with intention, with preferences, with customer behavior. And that is very, very critical as well. So, yes, we have big data. We have this huge, massive data with terabytes, with zettabytes. We have this level of granularity that we can apply. We can apply all sorts of neural networks, architectures, and topologies, you know, support vector machine, grid computing, but small data can and puts humanity back into marketing. We spoke a lot about value, purpose, giving back to society. Here is an example how big data can actually also do the same. Interesting, famous Martin Lindström that actually came up with some ideas as well about small data, little data, and saying, well, you know, we're talking about if you are a marketer, you should be spending time with real people. It's like nowadays, you know, Gallup is being replaced by Google. It's not just marketing research, it's real people in their environments. You know, ethnographic research, a much more human-centric alternative to big data. The importance of being there, presence, real time, and it is very important. So again, the division, not division, complementarity between big data and small data. There's a huge data deluge. You know, data deluge in terms of, you know, we've been building a capability of capturing and interpreting the rapid growing volume and variety of data, but not always very successful. There are a number of misconceptions. For instance, oh, we have more data, so we can actually make more wiser and better decisions. Well, not true. Not true at all. More data can actually create confusion, and you can actually change your mind many, many times. Data eliminates uncertainty. Really? I don't think so. You know, the belief that uncertainty can actually be eliminated through more data can actually lead to very unrealistic expectations. To paralysis, management, marketing paralysis, to frustration as well. So, companies are collecting data, but they are lost in that data. They collect data, they store data, but they are a bit shaky in terms of analyzing data. Look at that example. This is the United States, a recent survey. Only 28% of the companies said that their companies are dealing properly, are doing the good job analyzing website patterns in terms of traffic patterns. And normally, the percentage in a number of studies in Europe, North America, is always around 20, 30%, and then 70% vacuum. Look at another one. This is United States. Alteryx, data chaos, you know, analytic obscurity. 94% of companies saying, yes, we use multiple sources. Yes, fine. But then they said, you know, 64% say, the analysts, well, we need at least 5 different sources to combine and to analyze. 37% of them saying, oh, well, this is actually wasted time. Wasted time when we actually search for the data. When you are actually governing the data, analyzing the data, classifying the data, only 23% saying that actually is time wasted. So, again, 22% analytics share via email, but there is a lot of problems in terms of that. So, companies are struggling with data. You are in a much better position. A small company, a medium size, you have direct access to the data. You can have direct access to the customer base and to combine data with small data. Look at that. Otherwise, you have data silos. We were talking about earlier on with Philip about silo mentality, different functions. Oh, yes, data. Oh, this is accounting data. Oh, no, this is operations data. Oh, no, this is technology. So we have these silos, which can be a big, big hurdle. You have multiple pawns on this swamp. You are swamped by data. You have problems in terms of the governance of the data. And of course, look at that. This is the famous Gartner. the #1 forecasting consulting company in America, in the world, in fact. And they asked, what are the big challenges in terms of big data for your company? 55% said, well, value. How can we find value in big data? Some said, well, we don't have the skills or capabilities. 36%. 33%, the governance of data, allowing us as well to measure risk of that analysis. And then 31%, 1/3 said, well, defining our strategy. What do you mean defining your strategy? You know, you don't need a big data strategy. What you need is a business strategy that contains, incorporates your data, relevant data, useful data, valuable data. So there are a number of trends. Machine learning is getting smarter and smarter. Obviously, Moran spoke from a neuroscience perspective, and I've been working on neuroscience for 11 years as well. But in this case, you know, with machine learning and deep learning, I can use, you were predicting images from the brain, remember Moran? And I can, in terms of neural networks, convolutional neural networks, I can predict what is the next image. Visual, the next image. So, and processing language, natural language processing as well, getting smarter. Data security is a very important issue, top of mind issue. Big data analytics will drive certainly more and more, better and better customer engagement. And also better insights that will drive mobile sales. So big data, new behaviors, this will influence enormously the experience of your customers. Emotions influence what we remember, how we evaluate the encounters, and how we decide. But we need, as I mentioned to you in the title, to exploit beyond locked up relational databases, the knowledge, better knowledge, the graphs of customer profiles. And there is a way, and now we are working on knowledge graphs. Knowledge graphs models analyzes complex relationships between one human being and a myriad of new entities. Social media, family, friends, brand sentiments, purchasing power, purchasing history, location, etc. Products that you buy. This is done through knowledge graphs. So data is really great for spotting patterns, but also one of the things that is mostly overlooked is the issue about contextual marketing, contextual management, contextual behavior. You can have a good return on connected data, but you cannot forget the context. Context for business insights. So, yes, you can have input, action, and outputs, but in between, you need to analyze the context where it all happened in real time. And for me, context is mainly built on 6 important pillars. You've got big data, the computation of the data, you've got wearable computing, and then you've got social network data, location data, and then, of course, sensor data. And I'll be showing you now 2 or 3 things. Look at that. At the moment, we're talking about 2018, we've got 150 million sensors already forecasted, detected, etc. They're expecting 1 trillion in 2 years from now. 40 million data points per second. This is huge. This is huge. For instance, you can actually use context-aware computing and sensors to be able to analyze where you are, to trigger questions, to get feedback from you, etc. Data capture. So software has been developed for your PC, pocket PC, mobile, whatever, to acquire that data, information about the context of what you are doing, and to provide you with a way to feedback to the company, to an organization, etc. So understanding location, understanding context data, for me, redefines marketing in the future. Apart from a lot of other philosophical insights, obviously. But nowadays we are moving to body data. We're talking about just data, no, body data. So incredible, comes from your body, biometrics. Some of you probably, for instance, would you like to send a sensory message called attack to your boyfriend, your wife, to your husband? I can send you a sensory message like if we're giving a hug to your partner, etc. But body data, wearable technology, if you want tech dogs, wearable devices, fashionable technology is really coming forward at an incredible exponential growth and speed. So incorporating computer, advanced electronic technologies, fibertronics, it's called fibertronics on your clothing, like Levi's is doing at the moment. So the design that incorporates practical functions as well, like a pair of jeans, but I'm measuring your senses as well, your emotions, your biodata. So wearable devices and all these what we call activity trackers are part of the Internet of Things, the Internet of everything. Since they are part of a network embedded with electronics, software, sensor technology, connectivity. And interesting enough is that you can exchange all this data with you, with the manufacturer, with the company, without any intervention of a human being. But you need to have permission from the person that you are analyzing, obviously. Apple is just now about to launch, they have a patent for collecting data on blood oxygenation, heart rate and body temperature through your audio earbuds. That's a good example of body data and biodata. But you can have more. You can have single points of data. I can have that embedded in your jacket, in your hat. I can recognize you very easily. I can do more. I can actually find the unique characteristics of you, either being the hair, the length of the hair, either being the face, the color of your skin. I can analyze your clothing, if you're wearing a scarf or not, your body. Biometric data, body data, the next stage of big data. And more. Context, I just mentioned about context, very important. So can we have the knowledge and the context? Can we have devices that are becoming more useful? Yes, you can. I mean, these examples about film. You want to see a film or you want to see a theater. So yes, prefer genres that you like. Okay, favorite directors, favorite actors, top-rated films, location, what is the near theater, etc. What about the money that you normally pay? What time, show times? You would normally go with friends or family. What do they like? Oh yes, Susie likes, comedy, but the problem is that Jack likes action films. You can do that. All that can be done through body data. Incredible nowadays, we are now entering a new era, what we call smart tokens, if you will, based on a technology which is really optical sensing, visual sensing technology. So 3D images sensing by recognizing the tiniest gestures. You don't need a lens. You can recognize. So clearly captures information, rich scene contextual data in a tiny form using this optical sensing technology. Smart tokens. And then, of course, wearable sensors. I don't know how many of you would like to have a jacket, like this, and all the time being monitored in terms of your biodata. Interesting. I had a project called ImoAir that relates to wearable sensors, which had about 6 different platforms. You have 2 of them which involve biodata and location casting, where you are contextual. Then you have an integrated platform called FEV, facial coding, eye tracking, and voice speech analysis, voice prints, utterance analysis, the sounds that came out of your mouth, and then of course the hood of the jacket, EEG. EEG, in fact, NIRSIT, infrared spectroscopy. So obviously I had problems in terms of I am extremely ethical human being, ethical researcher, ethical academic, but I had a number of problems in terms of testing this jacket with people, because people are a bit wary about using this. But just because we have this huge amount of data, thousands of sensors supplying data, that does not mean the system is intelligent, does not really mean the system is accurate or actually very, very useful for your company. The important thing is, what are you going to do with the data and all this information? One of the problems is the issue about dark data. How can companies collect all this, store all this information and transform the data into insights to make a better engagement with customers, with people, with stakeholders? That's the problem. So Interesting, big data analytics will join forces with artificial intelligence, and it will impact our lives, daily lives, for better, smarter, self-learning algorithms. Neural networks will do that, and devices. And we are reaching a point where we're going to have more and more analytics, self-serving analytics, self-service. So when you combine and converge cloud computing, Internet of Things, and big data, this will create a huge plethora, a huge array of new opportunities. It seems that everything now and in the future will have a sensor and will pass on information to the mothership. While innovations in storage have sped up the process of capturing data, we are still lagging behind of accessing the data and understanding the data. And this poses a major challenge for the future. And as I mentioned to you as well in my first slide, the title, we are moving more and more towards blended reality. Blended reality, I'm not talking about just virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality. We're talking about blended reality, combining the morphing of new media ecologies, for instance, individual platforms, liquid media, through your smartphone, through your wearable tech, earrings, whatever you want, with the web, with data. You know, another talk I gave, I talked about VR web, combining virtual reality with the web. So, geolocation, very, very important, and of course, collaboration economy in terms of the nexus points that surround your existence. Finally, just mentioning about an interesting fact nowadays, certainly it's happening in Europe, Northern Europe. I'm not sure about the United States. I don't have any examples about the United States, but, or Turkey, unfortunately, but maybe you can actually help me with that, is the era of data consumer. Consumers are actually standing up and saying, wait a minute, you are using my data. It's data mining with a Y. My data. You have two options. Either you provide me a good service or a good product, or you have to pay for it. And that is interesting. Data consumer. A love-hate relationship between us as human beings and the users of our data. I am my data, belongs to me. I'll give you the example of my electricity power supplier in Scotland. Okay? It's called Scottish Power. The owner is not Spanish, a Basque company called Iberdrola. And they are normally ranked bottom in terms of customer satisfaction. And now a number of people saying, okay, if you carry on like this, not providing me with the best solutions, I want you to pay me £250 a year. That is the power of my data. And even there is a companies, this is very interesting, a company, Velvet, a product, Out 60 device, which allows homes, households, people to sell leftover data. You've got data you want, and also a phenomenon linked with that is the people are more and more taking, listen, I've got all this data, this bio data, I'm fine. Can I have a better premium for my insurance? So this issue about data, personal data, and me having control of that data is very, very important for the future. And I'm finishing with two jokes. One is, well, we have decided to take big data to the next level. Humongous data, more higher than huge data. And please beware of this. Are you sure this is the way you get data into the cloud? I don't think so. Eşekur Edrin. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Luis Mutillo. Evet, çok değerli profesörümüze teşekkürlerimizi sunuyoruz. Bu arada bir bilgiyi sizlerle paylaşmak istiyorum. Bugün talep, ilgi, World Marketing Summit İstanbul'a öyle yoğun, öyle büyüktü ki tek salon bizler için yeterli olmadı. Şu anda diğer salonlardan da izleniyoruz, canlı olarak takip ediliyoruz. Hatta online olarak 2000'in üzerinde kişi şu anda canlı olarak zirveyi takip ediyor. Bugün Haliç Kongre Merkezi'nde de 4000'in üzerinde kişi şu anda bu oturumları takip ediyor World Marketing Summit İstanbul'a ilgi oldukça yoğun. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Ve ben Lale Elmacıoğlu, bu önemli organizasyonun sunuculuğunu üstlenirken bir teşekkür daha etmek istiyorum. Dünyanın en önemli zirvelerinden birine başarıyla ev sahipliği yapıldığı için İstanbul Ticaret Odası Yönetim Kurulu Başkanı Sayın Şekip Avdagiç ve emeği geçen herkes için bir alkış rica ediyorum. Çok teşekkürler. Bizleri takip eden gençlerimiz var, üniversiteliler var, öğrenciler var. Onlar biliyorsunuz ki interneti oldukça yoğun bir şekilde kullanıyorlar. Öğrencilerimize de buradan selam gönderiyoruz ve ben özellikle hashtaglerimizi belirtmek istiyorum. Sosyal medya paylaşımları için değerli konuklarımız, pazarlamanın zirvesi İstanbul'da hashtagini veya WMS İstanbul 2018'i kullanabilirsiniz paylaşımlarınız için. Bir kez daha tekrarlamak isterim. Pazarlamanın zirvesi İstanbul'da veya WMS İstanbul 2018 hashtaglerimiz. Ve World Marketing Summit İstanbul tüm hızıyla sürüyor. Bir panelle devam ediyoruz şimdi de. Panelin konusu yıkıcı ve dijital çağda 21. yüzyıl pazarlamasının geleceği. Moderatör Fahim Kibriya ve kıymetli panelistler Profesör Philip Kotler, Profesör Mark Oliver Opresnik ve Profesör Dominic Hansens'ı huzurlarınıza davet ediyorum panel için. I would like to invite moderator Fahim Kibriya and precious panelists, Professor Philip Kotler, Professor Mark Oliver Opresnik and Professor Dominic Hansens for the session. Thank you so much. Welcome, welcome. Have a seat, please. Yes. Yes. Have a seat, please.
Hi. Very schön live. İyi günler.
Hey,
how are you doing?
Thank you
How are
so
you doing?
much. Thank you.
Great job.
You're so nice and kind. Thank you so much.
I wish I could speak as good as Louis Coutinho.
Evet, ben bir kez daha yinelemek isterim. Bu oturumda görev alacak birbirinden değerli isimleri moderatör Fahim Kibriya ve kıymetli panelistlerimiz Profesör Philip Kotler, Profesör Mark Oliver Opresnik ve Profesör Dominic Hansens. Panelimizin konusu yıkıcı ve dijital çağda 21. yüzyıl pazarlamasının geleceği sevgili konuklar. Thank you so much.
All right, so I'll start, we are all here to, this is working, right?
Louder.
I'll go there. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So we are here to talk what would be the future of the marketing, in the disruptive times. And I can see the disruptive times are happening, We are all here to learn, but everybody is carrying the cell phone, So disruption is there. Everybody is having the phones in their hands, taking pictures, looking on the social media, etc., etc. So let's ask the experts, we have Professor Philip Kotler, Mark Oliver, and Dominic, that what would happen, in such a disruptive times, where the life has really gone disruptive in the last few years. As Luis Coutinho just said, that data, everybody is focusing on data, and 90% of data is collected in the last 2 years. So what was the life before the data was collected, I think everything was pretty normal. Marketing was happening, brands were coming out, so much was on the planet, this is a very different world. Before we start with the panelists, I give you an example here. myself and Professor Kotler, we went to a country, you know. We landed in the morning and we met quite a bit of people, you know. Somebody picked us from the airport and took us around back to the hotel. And in the evening, there was a dinner, gala dinner, and there were about 300 top people. And everybody was, when they were getting a minute for talking, they say marketing is dead, marketing is dead, marketing is dead. When my turn came, I also said the marketing is dead. They said, how you know that marketing is dead here? You came this morning. I said, I came this morning, I met so many people, I gave my card to everybody, you know, my business card, and at the end of the day, among all you 300, I got one business card in return. And they were all looking on each other, who made this mistake, who gave this business card? And I said, don't worry, it's not among you. And the funny thing was, the driver who picked us in the morning, he gave the business card, because a business card is a marketing tool for you, for yourself. And that guy wanted to do his marketing. So the people who were at the dinner, they said, yeah, marketing is dead. And I understood very well. And so in a very different world we are living today, where we are in disruptive world, and we are thinking how the marketing will shape up with all the neuroscience tools and all the big data. So let me start my question with Professor Kotler. Professor Kotler, you as a father of modern marketing, how you foresee the future of marketing in the next 10 years, sir?
I think, can you hear me, first of all?
Yes.
Raise your hands if you cannot hear me. No hands showed up, so you can hear me. Thank you. I think that marketing will be more and more understood by people over time in many countries. The main thing to share with you is that marketing is not only about commerce. We try to market places in the world, like Istanbul. People here are trying to get factories to come to Turkey, more tourists to come, more skilled people to come to Turkey. So that's a marketing problem. We call that place marketing. That's becoming an art. I have been asked how to market a nation. In fact, one of our tasks will be how to market Turkey. But then there's also the marketing of ideas, the marketing of social causes, the marketing of people, celebrities. For example, a lot of young people come to me and they say, I'm a singer, I'd like to become well-known. What she is saying is, I want to be a brand. So the whole idea is that from marketing being something that a company making food or clothing does, to being something that everyone should do easily and with understanding. Let me give you an example. I remember someone coming to me and saying, I don't have anything to do with marketing. So I say to them, did you ever apply for a job? And they say, yes. And I said, what did you do to be sure you're the one to win the job? Oh, I dressed very well, I combed my hair and so on. You did marketing. You were trying to project your brand or create a brand. Then I would say, did you ever compete for an apartment in an area where there's just a few apartments, but you want to live in that area? Oh, yes. And what did you say to the agent? I showed the agent I'm very reliable, that I fit into this community. So just in the practice of living, a person has to be pretty sensitive to other people and to project why they are going to be helpful to fit in, and so on. So part of the future is marketing will become common in the vocabulary of people, whether they're marketing causes, ideas, places, and so on and so forth. And there are skills involved. And the skills generally in marketing are the 4 Ps. Knowing what to make of your product, how are you going to price your time and your effort, how are you going to message people about what you are about. You know, product, price, place, and promotion still remain part of any marketing plan, even if it's not about a product. And the other idea that will get to be bigger is get more precise about what your purpose is and who you are trying to help, whose life you're trying to improve. Because, you know, Coca-Cola doesn't have that problem. Coca-Cola is a mass product that is supposed to make everyone happy if they enjoy that kind of sugar drink. But normally, any good marketer says, I can't serve the world. I'm going to define my target market. And we have a name for the process. It's STP. Segment the market. Break it into parts. Figure out which segment is the one you should be addressing. And it should be a segment where you can do a good job for that segment. Don't choose a segment where you're not capable. And then position yourself and tell that segment why you can do the best for them. And it's as simple as that. And that's called segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So this will become common language in much of social discourse over the years.
Sure. Professor Mark, are you ready?
I think so.
Okay. So my question to you is, Mark, you know, we are living in a very different world. We are living in a world of digitalization. We are almost, I call it, we are almost slave to the technology, you know. So it's a very different world where we are totally depending on kind of technologies and etc. Now, when a company plans their marketing budget, what you feel should be given to the traditional marketing and what portion should go to the digital marketing? Although I believe that digital and marketing are two separate scenarios. Marketing is a word which is hijacked by the digital guys just to create a situation, digital marketing. So what you feel, what should be the ideal balancing of the budget?
It's a very good question. Thanks, Fahim. This question is very difficult to answer, and I would like to answer like my wife always answers. I'm married to a judge, so she's a lawyer, and every time I'm asking her, was he guilty, was he not guilty, she always said, it depends. So I'm answering the question like she would do. So it depends on the target customer. So, for example, if you're targeting, Professor Kotler, Philip was just talking about the STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning. If you're targeting, for example, elderly people being 60 and over, there are probably less using social media that extensively than Generation Y or Generation Z are doing. So it depends very much on your target group. So there is no rule of thumb saying you have to have 50-50 or 70-30. So first you need to observe how the customers behave. And Professor Moutinho and also Professor Moran Surf were highlighting how you can better understand your customers. So first you need to understand who is the customer, what is their buying behavior, what is their media usage in order to answer that question in a sophisticated way.
Let me ask a question. Can a company be safe in not going into digital at all, just using 30-second commercials and good, you know, the right price and so on? Can a small or medium-sized company be safe in not starting some digitalization? And on the other hand, at the other extreme, can some young person start a company saying, I'm only going to go digital and I'm going to be successful and I'm never going to make a 30-second commercial or talk to an ad agency? Both extremes are possible.
Yeah, both extremes are possible, and I think this is absolutely doable, in particular because there are so many small and medium-sized enterprises who are not having multi-million-dollar budget like Coca-Cola has. Social media in general is a very, very good way and platform to talk to a potentially very, very relevant big audience. So that is,
Mark,
that is very good.
Let me ask you this. I'm a company here, let's say, that does not have one digital person in the company. There's no young person who was a digital native. Do I need one? And how do I go about, what do I do with the first one? How much is it going to cost me, or she going to cost me? And what should I say they should be doing for the next month or the next year? How much, I have to give them a budget, don't I?
Right, yeah, absolutely agree. So everybody talks about digital marketing or digitalization or transformation. You need, of course, also to staff the departments accordingly. So just having a Facebook page or a Twitter account is not good enough, because people want to talk to companies in today's world. It's more a kind of a dialogue, and all customers are expecting that.
Wait,
so,
I may disagree.
And you need people to talk to,
what about,
to customers.
Isn't the first thing is for that digital person you just hired to get your web going? You should have a web address. You should You should have which tells what kind of company you are and how to reach the company and all that.
Sure,
now that takes some time, and that may take about a month building a good web.
Of course. Yeah, you need a web page, but also you need Twitter and Facebook account as well, depending on the target group, right? And depending on your goals you want to achieve. So, but it is not doable with current stuff, because it takes a lot of resources. For example, we work with Adidas. Adidas, they just have 50 people only in social media reading the whole day what is written in any kind of forum about Adidas and about their competitors as well. So they spend enormous amounts of money also, invest in people to observe how customers tick and to engage in dialogues. But of course, first you need to get the basics right. You need a website which is attractive, where people can contact you, etc., etc.
Professor Dominic, I faced a situation. I was in Bulgaria speaking on a conference, and the Facebook head of Europe was sitting next to me in the panel, and I asked him, I said, oh, so companies are spending through the Facebook on advertising. Have you ever calculated the ROIs? And he said, no, that's not our job. So my question to you, that how imperative it is when you spend on the digital media for communicating your product, how important the ROI is, return on investment?
Okay. All right, but that is also a big question, and it's not just with respect to digital media, but media in general. It's just a little easier to do with digital media. So, how important is it? I would say it's a function of the role of the media in your enterprise. See, we know that advertising elasticities or effects, let's say, by themselves, they're not that high. I'm not saying they're zero, but they're not that high. No company has ever gone out of business because it put too much money on TV and not enough in radio, in other words. Okay? But when the media, like the Facebook medium or other, starts to fulfill different roles, then it becomes very, very important. For example, if it is a vehicle for distribution building, so in other words, it's not just the advertising, it's also reaching customers that you otherwise cannot reach and actually have business with them. Now it's not just advertising, but it's also distribution. In some cases, it adds pricing into it. In other words, the medium is not only a vehicle for advertising and for distribution, it's actually a vehicle for segmented pricing. Okay? So now the role of that medium gets bigger and bigger, and I like very much what Professor Kotler said earlier about use the 4 Ps as a framework. Is very, very powerful. Promotion, place, product, and price. So that's my general answer to that. Now, if you now get into the area of ROI measurement, as many companies do, then sure, if you have so much money to spend, you want to spend it where it produces the highest return. That's quite clear. But that's going to impact the profitability of the enterprise, not necessarily the survivability of the enterprise. Okay? So in other words, it's terribly important from an efficiency perspective, but I view it as somewhat less important from a strategic perspective. And I hope that clarifies the difference.
Well, let me ask a question. In the old world of marketing, the old marketing is called the time we used advertising and the 30-second commercial and so on. Did we know what the ROI was for a campaign where we spent hundreds, so much money?
Yeah.
Did they tell? Did we ask the advertising agency to come back with a number, and were they fake numbers or real?
Okay. That's a tricky question to answer as follows. We certainly had the ability to know. Okay?
We did.
Since about the 1960s, we've seen research on measuring advertising ROI. One of your books, going back to 1970 or something, a long time ago, actually showed exactly how to do it. I'm referring to the Blue Book. And so we've known how to do this for quite some time. Whether we actually did it, that's a different question. And the ad agencies may not always been in their best interest to promote that kind of information. But in the last few years, I would say that interest has gone up a lot because there is a big call worldwide for what's known as marketing accountability. So demonstrating that the investment actually produces something rather than just maybe a good feeling about it. Okay?
And you've told some of us meaningfully that one way to find out the ROI is to do an experiments, because if you are going to reach 3 different neighborhoods in Istanbul with the same campaign, and they're similar neighborhoods, and you just put a lot more digital in one and less in another or whatever, that experiment will show the impact.
Yes, that is one way to do it, and often what smaller companies can do who don't necessarily have huge databases to document their advertising impact. But yes, just as you said, you can do relatively simple things. If you're questioning whether or not a certain campaign is effective, take part of your market and don't do the campaign at all.
Right.
Go, as known as, go dark in that market. Or take another one and double the spending, okay? And learn from the reactions to say, oh, this works and this doesn't work, okay? The digital age actually makes that a lot easier. Because the manipulation with randomization techniques of randomly exposing some consumers and randomly not exposing other consumers makes that in fact very easy. And a lot of companies in the digital space actually will never do any campaign without having run an experiment to prove that it actually works.
Well, I'm getting an idea that we need a new person in our company in the marketing department who I will call a finance researcher. I'm not sure who could help track what we're doing and knows finance as well as marketing. And can give us reliable numbers. We don't have such a, what would we call that person?
Yeah.
Financial marketer?
Perhaps. In fact, you just used an important word. That person that you're describing is not necessarily in the marketing department. That person may well be in the chief financial officer's office or department, or if you wish.
Let me go further. In big companies, it's very important for the head of marketing to be friends with the head of finance.
Yes.
Finance owns the money. And if they don't think you're using it well, they tell the CEO that we're wasting our money on marketing. And so the best thing you can do is have your office next to the finance guy and say, let's together work out a a rating system, a scoring system that pleases you as the finance person, pleases me as the marketing person, that we can tell the CEO what happened with the money.
That's exactly right, yes. And again, some companies have taken the lead in this and have good partnerships between those two groups, and others, quite frankly, don't and have kind of adversarial roles, because the financial metrics are quite clear. They're ROI type metrics. The marketing metrics are less clear. Mm-hmm. They might be brand strength, however measured. Right. Okay? Or consumer preferences or consumer awareness. Those are metrics that marketing people like. And the finance people say, okay, but show me how that impacts the bottom line. Okay? Mm-hmm. So that communication needs to happen. And unfortunately, the digital age makes that much easier.
You know, when you say ROI should be measured if possible, I agree. But there are other things like, how do we know that our brand is getting stronger or weaker? Brand strength is a word you just used. Mm-hmm. What's the metrics there? Is it the word brand equity? How do I track the strength of my brand and so on?
Yeah. There are a couple of ways to do it, and it's a good point. I mean, here's a very simple one for a small company. How much business do you generate from customers calling you versus business generating from you calling customers? Okay.
Good.
As you like to point out, the difference between the push and the pull. Okay. If people call you with business and you don't have to do anything, you got a strong brand. But if you have to call people all the time and sell hard, okay, your brand needs work. Okay. And sometimes just that ratio, if I did 100,000 lira worth of business, how much came from incoming without any effort versus with effort, that's a good, very practical measure of brand strength.
You remind me of something that is technical, but it's called the Net Promotion Score.
NPS, yeah.
Which you could look up right in the internet.
Yeah.
Net Promotion Score. It's a sign of how strong your brand is. Do this. Ask a sample of your customers the following question. Have you ever recommended our brand? You use it, but have you ever talked about it to anyone else? And if the person says, I love the brand, and I've told a lot of people, give that a score of 10. This is a scale, 1 to 10. If they say, you know, I've occasionally mentioned your brand favorably, but I don't do much of it, but I'm willing to do more, give it a 9. If they say, I've never done it, but sure, I would be comfortable praising your brand, that's an 8. By the way, some of your customers will say, I don't talk about it. In fact, I don't like your brand, frankly. And so that's, the Net Promotion Score is if you interviewed 100 people, how many 10s, 9s, and 8s did you get? And subtract from that how many 1s, 2s, and 3s you got. And that's your Net Promotion Score. It's another measure, right, of the strength of your brand.
Yeah, yes, it is. I'll address that a little bit later this afternoon in my presentation. But these measures of customer satisfaction and customer loyalty, NPS is one of them, is a very good one. Not only are a very good indicator of that any company can gather of how you're doing relative to your customers, but it's actually, now for publicly traded firms, it's actually been shown to influence your stock price. Okay?
More on that.
Yeah,
give us an idea.
It's very interesting. Stepping outside of marketing here into finance for a little bit, you know, financial theory and investment theory will say that only when your cash flows go up in sort of an unexpected way, in other words, good news, do you see a movement in stock price. Okay? In other words, investors react to real numbers, and when they're positively surprised, they buy, and when they're negatively surprised, they sell. Very simple. Well, some very extensive data analysis has shown that these movements in customer satisfaction even though in the very short run they don't really do anything to your cash flow, right? The cash flow is what it is, but they are a leading indicator, okay? So if your customer satisfaction goes up, then one of three things or all things happen. Number one, your existing customers come back to you. Two, they buy more from you. And three, they tell other people, okay? And that generates future cash flows that the investors are not yet aware of, okay? So it's a leading indicator, in other words. And there is no reason to believe why that wouldn't be the same with smaller firms that are not publicly traded, because they too have a value. It may not be a public value, but it's a private value to the owners.
A lot of companies here will want to become a strong brand, feature a strong brand, and how do they know that their brand work is on a new brand? On a new brand, they're going to create awareness. That's what we're good at. I mean, we can, by the way, it's not that easy nowadays. It's hard to get anyone's attention. Everyone is busy. So even getting awareness, but that's the easy part.
Yeah.
But that's not enough. You may want to kill your new brand because it's only getting awareness, but no one's buying.
Right.
So what are the stages?
Yeah. Well, as you said, it starts with awareness.
Okay.
But if the awareness creates a sense of preference, which is the next stage, or at least intent to buy, okay, you're closer to purchasing. If there is purchasing, now comes the most important one, is there needs to be satisfaction, okay? And then you get repeat purchasing, okay? Some of my students ask me, for example, what is going to happen to Tesla in the world market? You know, so here is this electric car company or battery company that is quite a bit ahead of the competition in terms of the number of models and the volume of their cars, but they have tremendous financial problems. They are tremendous setup costs, etc. And so the stock price is like a yo-yo. It goes like this, okay? And so some people ask me, well, how do you know that Tesla will succeed? My answer is always, look at people who are buying their second Tesla. Okay.
It's a good one.
And the company's been out now 5, 6, 7 years, maybe more. It's probably time to see a repeat purchase kick in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you see a lot of these original Tesla owners buy the second Tesla or the third Tesla, this company is going to be just fine.
Good.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Good, good. You know, it's interesting. I read an article about branding will be less important in the automobile business generally when we end up with driverless cars. Think about it. A lot of people buy a car to be part of their power and to make a statement about themselves. I'm driving a Mercedes, I'm enjoying it. When we don't drive our own car, we just walk into and sit down in our car, the brand will be less important. Is that possible?
Possible, yes, but if the brand adjusts to this different reality, then it seems to me there are marketing ways to avoid that.
Okay.
First of all, the existing car makers have the joy of driving, for lack of a better word. They exploit that differently. For example, BMW is very big on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the driverless car in that sense is a bit of a threat to BMW,
yes,
because they are very big on that joy of driving, which now goes away.
Driving, yeah.
Exactly. But there are other aspects of a driverless car that I may not have
Safety,
thought about yet.
other things.
Exactly.
Yes.
Comfort and a whole host of other attributes.
Yeah.
So the generalization of that is that strong brands, even strong brands, need to adjust to changing times and changing consumer tastes. I think that's an example of that general principle.
That's it. Sure.
The brands, what's happening, I give the example of Mercedes. They have slightly revised their strategy. What they think, it was an image once upon a time. Now they say, oh, we need one Merc in every doorstep. And that's where they have come up with the good old days when they have the star on the front, and people all feel this is Mercedes. Now there is a A series, B series, C series, E series. So they have come from a tiny one to a longer one. Maybach, they have concluded the line, you know. So they knew that what is happening in future. The star is no more there on the front. They have rather fixed it on the bonnet, you know. So BMW is quite smart, but Merc has they want to be everywhere. Yeah. Because in this time, you know, you were talking about in the finance and marketing clashes, you know. Sure. But you always suggest, you know, always advise that you should have two majors, finance and marketing. So you're expert in both at the same time, that spending and the ROIs also.
Yes.
So that's a great way to
I've
learn.
always advised my students to do a double major.
Sure.
Because especially if they want to rise in the company.
Yes.
Rising in the company, it gets to be more and more about finance because the big picture.
Sure.
And if they don't know that, then they're going to stay a marketing researcher.
Yes.
Or a product manager, but they're not going to be chosen to run the company. And by the way, it's very interesting information about how we choose CEOs. I mean, we have a lot of people here who run companies. They are the CEO. Did you know in my country, 25% of the chosen CEOs are asked to leave after 2 years? What a bad job of choosing CEOs. If that data is correct, why are we choosing the wrong CEOs? The answer is we choose them on the wrong basis. Let's use him because he's likable. What has likability got to do with running a company? It might help, but that may mean he always wants to be likable so he doesn't make tough decisions. But every good CEO knows he's going to lose. He won't be liked by some people because he's decisive. He makes decisions, and it doesn't make everyone happy. So we're now trying to, there's been a big study conducted on how we choose, what the traits are of a person who's capable of running a company. We can talk about that later. May I ask something, Mark, of you? You and I wrote a book on social media marketing. So should people who never were digital, can they be really good digital people by just retraining? I mean, we should probably hire some young people too, right, who grew up with it. But in your experience, have people who have a lot of experience but they never did digital, can we train them to be very good at digital?
Yeah, that is absolutely possible, but you have to be open-minded for that. You don't have to stick to the old things. Because I think that is a general trait that also should be encompassed by every kind of chief executive officer in today's world. So being open-minded, being innovative, because a lot of times we are coming to small and medium-sized enterprises, also the big ones, and we're telling them, why are you doing this, this kind of strategy in this kind of way? They are saying, oh, we've been doing this for 100 years, for example. That's always a nice saying. All right, we have been doing this for 100 years, or we know our customers for 125 years. And then I always ask the question, how old are they now? Didn't they ever change? So, and they said, oh, it's still the same kind of target group, right? But consumer buying behavior and media usage, they change. So if they adapt, they can learn that. And you were asking the question to Dominic, to Professor Hansens, in how far is there a sales funnel? So it starts with awareness. And we have a new kind of model in social media. We believe it's quite practical. We call it not the AIDA model. This was the old model coming from the old days. Attention, interest, desire, and action. And now we have, it's easy to remember, we have this Adidas model. It sounds a bit like Adidas, attention. And then people, all too often, they are doing search. So they are going on the internet and then they're searching for something, for a service or for a company, a corporation. So attention, search, and then interest, desire, action, and then it's sharing, as it does. So the S in the end is for sharing, because it's what you were referring to if they buy the second Tesla. And also I would like to add, if they continue to talk about Tesla, then become brand ambassadors. And this could be also an interesting metric, an interesting KPI, key performance indicator, to track the success of a campaign.
Very good.
So I would say it is applicable. It's very easy for every kind of enterprise to capitalize on social media.
Mark, I have a question. You know, lately the companies have started cutting the digital marketing budget. The first one, Procter & Gamble, they cut by $200 million in September. Now, as you are expert on social media, you wrote the book together with Google and on YouTube, etc., and with Professor Kotler also. So what do you think? Why they have started cutting the budget? A reason could be that when an ad goes out, it's not seen by the organic eyes, it is by the robots, or somebody is watching and the numbers are clicking and the companies are making money like Google and Facebook. What is your opinion on that?
We think that this is due to the target group they're aiming at, because the younger people, if I look at my students, and the students are 19 or 20, 21, hardly anybody watches TV anymore, because they all watch Netflix or they go to the YouTube, but they don't regularly see linear television, so they're not looking into kind of magazine and say what's on TV tonight, because they're looking Netflix and YouTube. So it's different kind of media usage, and this, of course, makes it difficult for traditional companies to target or to communicate via traditional TV commercials to young audiences, right? And therefore, a lot of companies in parallel are also putting money into social media. But you don't need big spendings on social media. That's a good thing. That's good news for all small and medium-sized enterprises, because it can be done at very, very low cost. We listened to Professor Cerf when he was talking about the cost for social media for a campaign during Super Bowl, right? $3 million for 30 seconds. So not everybody can afford big spendings, right, on this, what you call ATL, above the line communication. So it's good news that it takes very little investment to set up a website, to set up a Facebook page or a Twitter account, and to get in contact with people. Or to do also marketing research, to collect the data that Luis helps you to analyze via social media. We think that all these forums, all this internet is a great source of information as well about your competitors. But companies are not so much aware of that. So they also need to look not only what is written about their products, but also what is written about competitors' products, because then they figure out what precisely is a problem of a customer.
Professor Kotler, in the last 20 years, when the technology has started coming into marketing, I've noticed that inequality has gone really high. There are really rich people or really poor people. Now, you are also the inventor of social marketing. Do you feel in future that social marketing will try to decrease the gap between inequality, or maybe the rich people start spending on the poorer ones? How we decrease that gap in future with the social marketing?
It's a very good question. Here are the facts about what's happening to income and wealth. Given the idea that capitalism is working, we want it to work well, but it's really working for the rich. Namely, those people who have a lot of money will make more money. And those who just have wages as the only source of income are very angry now. Here's why. Here's a country where the GDP is going up, let's say. Wages are flat. So who's getting the GDP that's going up. It's the 1%. Now, we're not asking for a revolution. We're asking this question that Peter Drucker asked so many years ago. What should the CEO be paid in relation to the average worker?
Yeah.
Let me surprise you with the number that Peter suggested. 20 times.
Yeah.
A CEO is a good guy in saying that he doesn't want more than 20 times what the average worker gets. We're now beginning in the United States to require each company of any size to show the number, which is the ratio of his pay to the average worker. That number is 320.
Yeah. 320. Yeah.
320. I'm happy people are getting rich, but is that a good thing for a business and a society? You know, it's almost committing suicide, because if we leave very little money for the mass market, then who's going to buy our goods? Well, we can have mansions. We have people who are going to buy private airplanes and build their own yachts. If that's how you want your resources to be used, it's not the right way to use resources. If people are living in very poor housing, and one mansion could have built a lot of better places for people to live, we've got to start asking those leaders of ours to share more of the benefits of capitalism and of the growth. The other thing that's happening is GDP is not a sufficient indicator of how well Turkey is doing, or a city within Turkey, because GDP is everything you sold. If you sold more cigarettes, the GDP goes up. Maybe the cancer goes up too, but you didn't ask about that. So there's two other indices that people like to consider. One is the index of happiness in the country, where we learn that the happiest country is Denmark. And it's not because they earn that much more, it's just there's something about satisfaction, being satisfied. The other index is an index of well-being. And that means that people are more people are getting educated, more people are getting healthy. So I like the well-being because it's a little more stable than just happiness. But the main thing is, what is a society for, if not to produce health and wealth and education? So my shift in thinking about capitalism, I've shifted to liking the Scandinavian model. The Scandinavian model is called sometimes the Nordic model. They say a good society is one that gives good education and good health to its people and other things, and even if the taxes have to be higher, So no one has to be suddenly with a medical problem that kills all of their assets, and so on and so forth. So I think the thing that's going to save capitalism is really Scandinavian capitalism, I think. And every society has to wrestle with this problem of what the future is of capitalism.
Sure. Professor Dominic, an interesting thing I read that carry forward the answer from Professor Kotler on that inequality. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, making $260 million every day. He said, I will give $300 million to a charity. But half of his employees are living on food stamps. So how do you foresee that? Of the employees
of Amazon, half of the employees are living on
food stamps. So how you see that, where the missing piece is in that Amazon, great brand, so much all around happening, but the salaries are not really very, even they can't live day to day?
Yeah, that is indeed, that is a serious issue. And it is not going to get better in the sense that the labor pool keeps on expanding, and at the same time, technology, much more so than, let's say, cheap imports from China or some other low-wage country. It's much more technology is eliminating some traditional jobs. And that is, I think, that's the trend line that we're on, and that I think is really problematic. I don't really have a solution to this. I know that some countries are starting to think about possible solutions, such as giving everybody a basic living wage. Okay, that's being experimented with in some places. But as long as we have population expanding, this will be a very serious issue. I remember I was attending a presentation on this very topic, and there was a Japanese executive in the audience who said just the opposite. He said, we can't wait for this to come faster because the Japanese population is declining. And so, so if they want to grow their economy, they actually need to get much more productivity out of the workers. They certainly need to employ everybody, give them high wages so that there is high purchasing power. So they actually don't face that problem. But a lot of other countries do. And in the case of Bezos, I did not know actually that this is a company that underpays a large percent of their workforce. It surprises me a bit because they're in the high-tech sector, which tends to pay better than, let's say, the restaurant sector or some other sectors. But it is something that, at least now in the US, you're starting to see changes. For example, in my city, in Los Angeles, the minimum wage has been drastically increased and will continue to increase over the next few years. So there are corrective measures being put in place, because in and of itself, as Professor Kotler was saying, we can't continue with a 300-to-1 ratio between CEO income and average worker income. That is just completely off balance.
Sure, thank you. Professor Kotler, you had a very, there used to be one of your good idea that marketing through cannibalization. Now, when you make a product, you get a team and start cannibalizing that product but I have noticed that the big companies, they started using in a negative way. Like Apple phone, when they launch a new model, they start cannibalizing your existing model by sending you the software which damages your phone.
Oh.
Yeah, so how you, and there was a big suit going on in US on this, that why they damage your phone. So how you see marketing through cannibalization will work in the future, 21st century, or they have to avoid it?
Well, let's be clear what cannibalization might be. I think that all companies are exposed to disruption, are very much, they should be aware that they may be replaced overnight by something else. And usually it will be replaced by some small firm that starts to sell the same thing, not as well as you'd sell it, not the most fashionable thing, but it cuts my cost of buying those things. And suddenly the market shifts toward the lower cost firm. So I think what's important is every company must do three things. They must do periodically what we call a vulnerability assessment. They must do an opportunity assessment, and they must do a scenario planning. What are they? Vulnerability is you go with your top people and you say, what could hurt us? What company can hurt us? Maybe it's not within your own competitive set. It's just a different kind of technology. And if you're going, this is a depressed meeting. I mean, everyone gets depressed because it's easy to imagine how you might be hurt. At least you're aware of this. Because if there's something that's going to disrupt you, what should you do? You should be doing the disruption. The whole point is to disrupt yourself before. Now, is that cannibalization? Now, whatever, disrupt yourself. Then the second meeting has to be about opportunities. Do we have any? I mean, there are companies that tell me they don't know where to go. As a matter of fact, when you look at all the money that the United States went back to the United States from Apple and the others who were keeping their money abroad, we thought that money would come back and build factories. No, that money came back and it was used in two ways. More dividends for the stockholders and more bonuses for top management. So basically, they didn't really know what to do with the money. My God, this is a terrible thing when capitalists don't need more money because they don't have opportunities in their mind. So I hope that every company is just breaking forth with so many ideas that the problem is really choosing the best rather than not having opportunities. The third thing is scenario planning. Ask yourself what you think the world will be like a year from now, or 3 years from now, or 5 years from now. What will gas prices be? Anything that is important for you to know. You'll probably end up with 2 or 3 scenarios. One is a pretty dim one. There will be an increase in joblessness because technology is killing some jobs. You could make up a lot of nightmarish views of a future for the next 3 or 4 years. What about a more optimistic scenario? What would make us optimistic about the next 3 or 4 years? Even with 2 scenarios, what would we do if, in fact, it's that depressing scenario? What should we now start doing now so we are not vulnerable to that situation? And then do the same scenario planning if it's optimistic. Because all of that is a way of thinking ahead. Because we have to be futurists to some extent. You can't just focus on what's selling now. What will sell of your product some years from now? Who's going to be the buyers? And by the way, if the buyers of the future are going to be the younger people, and if the younger people's media consumption is not advertisement, the 30-second commercial, but it is digital completely, and you're not going digital, you're not going to be attracting millennials, and they will be not buying your product. Sure. So if someone had said his firm doesn't have any digital, I'd say that's a weakness. That you are exposing yourself to a changing world where you will be irrelevant. You're going to be obsolete.
Professor Kotler, what would be your one advice to the Turkish small, medium enterprises, what you call hidden champions, for the next 10 years? Where would they should focus more?
You use the word hidden champions. It's a good word to bring up now. Let me just say there's a dear friend we all have, Herman Simon, who wrote a book called Hidden Champions. It was really a story about German companies that are not well known to the public, but they are so profitable. And the answer is they're nichers. Niching is profitable. So it would be the kind of company who serves a narrow need, which is global. It's a global need, and is known as the best for that need. For example, there is a need for the best binoculars in the world. It's needed by armies, so the generals can really have the best field glasses. And there's only one company to think of in that, and everyone will buy at the most expensive price those glasses. That's a nicher. That niche, by the way, the trouble is some of these German profitable niche companies are being bought by the Chinese. Wow. An acquisition spree by the Chinese to take over the niche. So your question is good because it's good for Turkey. Can I be maybe a nicher if I'm a B2B firm, where I'm making some mineral or ingredient that I'm the best at that ingredient, and I will be known as the best. In fact, there's 2 other competitors, but there's only one that's going to be rich. So niching to me has always been a very attractive strategy. For all we know, they're sitting right here, some of the top nichers in the world. They're not well known. Yeah.
Mark, you were in Shell for a while as a VP marketing. Then you did your training, you did your PhD, and you joined the teaching profession. So how you feel in the future, which way to go? You have experience from both sides. So what would be your advice to the Turkish companies? One good advice based on your experience from practical world and the academic world.
Practical advice. I would follow up on what Phil just said. I think because the times are so dynamic and everything is so volatile, you always have to think about how can you best disrupt yourself before you're being disrupted. And we are always taking the example of when we were sitting at a breakfast table. The biggest hotel corporation on the planet is Airbnb, and they don't own a single room, right? And the biggest logistics company on the planet is Uber, and they don't earn a single truck. And that's disruption. And every company can be disrupted. It's of course, it's a bit like everybody knows that, but nobody's too big to fail and nobody's too small to succeed. Even Apple and Amazon, those kind of corporations, may be disrupted in the future. We don't know. So my advice would be always have a look at the market, at the customer. I always try to be agile, to try to anticipate the future, like Phil was saying. Do the scenario planning. Where do you want to be? How is the world going to be in 1 year time? So don't remain where you are right now. There's a nice saying, and I would like to finish that, from Tim Menon. He was the executive vice president at Hewlett-Packard, and he said, the biggest single threat for any company on the planet is to stay with one previously successful business model or product 1 year too long. Mm-hmm. So, because then you become complacent, right? Then you lack agility, and you stop moving. I think this is, in today's world, in general, no matter in which branch you are, this is the key thing. You have to have an innovation culture.
I sometimes worded, too, at the end of a lecture, if you're in the same business tomorrow as you are in today, you will be out of business.
That's it.
Mr. Dominic, one advice from you, from B2B, because for the future in Turkey, like there must be a lot of people here who are primarily in that business, from B2B. So what is your advice for those specific companies? You know?
Yeah. Well, I would first of all totally concur with what has been said, but I think I would focus on excellence in my chosen segment, really try to be a leader, even if my market is small, but try to be a leader in it, not necessarily a market share leader, but a customer satisfaction leader. Because that then provides you with a brand image, which then, if you choose to grow in other directions, gives you a platform for doing so.
So we have a pretty reasonable good discussion with Professor Kotler, Professor Mark, and Professor Dominic. The future of marketing, well, marketing is there. Marketing was there, it is there, it will be there. See, we have to mix, like if we really want to succeed, what I can add here, that we have to mix the passion and profession, you know. The passion, what we feel inside, whatever profession we are in, but then passion make our profession to the next level. You know, I was lately in Japan, and the Fujifilm, their global CMO was asking us, you know, that what is your suggestion, how we can really go to the next level. And I gave them a suggestion. It just came the word to my mind at that moment. I said, never stop. And that word they picked so well that if you see the Financial Times of November 20th, They put a whole one-page ad there, never stop. And now they are planning to co-author a book together with Professor Kotler, and the name will be Never Stop. So they pick it so well. So we are so proud to be in Turkey and Istanbul. Shakib Bey has really made it happen. And we are also planning here to come here every year with WMS, and then putting a book together with Shakib Bey and Professor Kotler and other contributors on how the Istanbul can be really a brand builder in the future. There are a couple of things which are happening, and I'm sure our other speakers will share with you. But thank you very much, Professor Kotler. Thank you, Professor Mark. Thank you, Professor Dominic, for your contribution, and we look forward to you.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz değerli moderatörümüze ve panelistlerimize. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kapil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Evet değerli konuklarımız, şimdi 1 saatlik öğle yemeği için ara vereceğiz. Aranın ardından World Marketing Summit İstanbul ikinci oturumla devam edecek.